maester's parchment crackled in the hush of Winterfell's library, its ink so faded that Jon Snow had to tilt it beneath a sputtering candle before the letters surrendered their story. The scroll was thin as a spider's thread, tucked behind a crumbling tome on the Age of Heroes, and it bore a lacquered sigil unlike any he had seen. A lone black dragon's eye, ringed by ancient Balerion runes that shimmered when the light struck them just so. Dust motes swirled in the narrow beam of firelight as Jon's breath misted the air. He ran a gloved thumb across the wax seal and felt an almost imperceptible warmth, like the last ember in a hearth long gone cold. The words within were couched in riddles and half-remembered myths. Speaking of a nameless egg, dark as a moonless night, entrusted centuries ago to the Starks, when dragons still shadowed the narrow sea. A gift offered in desperate allegiance during Aegon's bloody wars of conquest, it claimed, then hidden in the stone depths beneath Winterfell for fear the north would burn should the black dread hatch beneath the wrong sky. Jon's pulse hammered. Ever since he was a boy, he had wandered those crypts after dusk, weaving between sculpted kings with iron swords and direwolf guardians. He knew each crooked stair and moss-veined wall by scent and shadow, yet the passage described here, beyond the weeping gate, beneath the wolf that never howled, meant nothing to him. He mouthed the phrase again, tasting its strangeness. Outside the frosted lattice windows, the hot breath of the forge lifted sparks into a night spangled with distant stars. The castle slept. For once, Ghost was absent, having slunk off toward the Godswood in silent patrol. Jon folded the scroll into his jacket, extinguished the candle, and slipped into corridors chilled by the heart of winter. Stone beneath his boots echoed faintly, and he felt the castle's age like a living presence, as though old Brandon the Builder himself watched every footfall. In the yard, the air smelled of snow iron and pine resin. The towers loomed, their torches guttered. Jon crossed the silent courtyard, passing under an arch where frost feathered the keystones, and descended the familiar stairs that spiraled down into the crypts. Each step carved with fading runes worn smooth by centuries of Stark feet. The torch in his hand hissed, smoke curling along the ceiling. He paused before the statue of Lyanna Stark, noticing something he had missed countless times. A narrow gap at the base of her stone wolf, parted just enough to slide a hand within. His fingers brushed coarse rope. From where? He could not guess. He pulled. Something ground open. The statue's pedestal shivered, revealing a slit of utter blackness wide enough for a slim man to squeeze through. A breath of air rose from the gap, warm, impossibly warm. It smelled of brimstone and riverstone and ancient earth. Jon ducked inside, torch raised. The passage twisted, carving deeper than any crypt he knew, until the ceiling began to arch with carved ribs like the inside of a beast. He realized then this was not merely carved rock. It was dragonbone fused to stone, the spine of some forgotten creature entombed beneath Winterfell. The idea stole what warmth remained in his blood. At last the tunnel widened into a chamber as round as a watchtower's heart, and lined with mirror-smooth obsidian bricks that glimmered like wet coal in firelight. At its center, upon a dais of cracked marble, lay an egg the size of a boar's head, blacker than midnight, veined with smoldering scarlet. When Jon drew close, the scales shimmered as if alive, and the air throbbed with heat enough to sting his cheeks. It could be no other. Balerion's egg, spawn of the Black Dread, first of Aegon's brood. But how had it come north? Tales whispered that Visenya Targaryen had parted from her brother-husband only once during the conquest, flying Vhagar beyond the neck under cover of storm clouds to parley with the king in the north. Had she bartered this egg in secret, demanding Stark fealty in exchange for peace? The thought boggled the mind. Jon's palm hovered over the shell. The moment he made contact, a spark leapt between skin and scale. Images flooded him. A sky furnace red, a colossal dragon shadowing kingdoms, cities burning beneath obsidian wings. A roar like shattering mountains reverberated through his bones. He staggered, torch falling. Yet the flames did not fade. Crimson light now emanated from within the egg itself. A crack formed, a hairline fissure glowing like molten steel in a smith's forge. Jon's heart hammered. He snatched the torch and stumbled back along the tunnel, sealing the secret passage behind him. His dreams that night churned with fire and wing beats, so vivid he tasted ash upon waking. Winter clung stubbornly to the north, yet dawn's pale fingers painted the courtyard in muted rose. Ghost emerged from the kennels with a fresh dusting of snow on his fur, pressing his cold nose to Jon's knuckles. Jon scratched him absently while his gaze drifted to the rookery, where ravens croaked news from every corner of the realm. Reports of southern lords bickering over small folk harvests, whispers of rising tensions after King Robert's death, talk of golden lions at court. But Jon's mind circled only the egg. The warmth he had felt still pulsed in his fingertips, as though a second heartbeat had lodged there. Over days that became weeks, he stole down to the secret chamber whenever he could. Each visit revealed new cracks along the shell, glowing brighter than forged coals. He brought cloth to wrap it, but the heat burned through lamb's wool. He tried to douse it in snow, yet the flakes hissed into steam before they settled. Finally, on the eve of the first spring thaw, the egg split with a sound like distant thunder. A hatchling tumbled forth. Slick with amniotic flame, jet black, wings translucent crimson against the torchlight, eyes twin coals that fixed on Jon. The creature's first breath exhaled smoke ribbons, and its shrill screech rattled the ancient obsidian. It was smaller than Jon's forearm, yet twice as heavy. Muscles coiled beneath leathery hide. When Jon reached out, it did not bite. Instead, it pressed its snout to his palm, nipping his thumb just enough for blood to bead. The hatchling licked the drop and shivered with satisfaction, a glow coursing under its scales. He wrapped it in a thick leather jerkin and spirited it to the abandoned shepherd's loft beyond the outer wall, a stone enclosure half collapsed by time. There he built a brazier that burned day and night, feeding it shaved oak, driftwood, and the occasional scrap of tallow pilfered from the kitchens. The hatchling devoured meat by the pound, and grew so rapidly Jon could almost see its bones stretch beneath skin. Wings widening, neck lengthening, talons sharpening to obsidian knives. He named it Vihalaxes in the old tongue. Shadow of fire. Though small, its roar already trembled the rafters and sent the kennel hounds howling in their chains. Only Ghost remained unafraid, prowling the loft's perimeter and studying the creature with curious amber eyes. Sometimes the direwolf sat nose to nose with the hatchling, each regarding the other as kin. Jon watched them and felt the same bond coil tight around his heart. Man, wolf, dragon, three beasts forged in winter's crucible. Samwell Tarly arrived from Castle Black one wind-bitten afternoon bearing scroll pouches bulging with dusty secrets. He was pale, breath smoking, too layered in furs to see anything but eyes. Jon greeted him in the old weirwood's shadow, where heart leaves whispered overhead. "Maester Aemon sent me," Sam gasped, producing a letter sealed with black wax. "He says the conclave debates the return of dragons. Whispers travel even faster than ravens." He lowered his voice. "He thinks you ought to know what they fear." Jon unfolded the letter. It spoke of portents, comets fiery red, of sailors glimpsing winged silhouettes over the sea breaker's teeth, of wildlings babbling about a night-born flame. Some in Old Town believed a dragon reborn would herald either salvation or doom. Within the citadel's shadowed halls, archmaesters argued whether Valyria's doom could be undone if one mastered new fire. Jon's gaze drifted toward the loft, where Vihalaxes dozed amid steaming straw. "Tell no one what you see here, Sam," he whispered. "Not yet." Seasons crept forward. Jon buried the last of his childhood illusions with Lord Eddard's execution down in the south. News carried by a raven's wing that broke like ice upon Winterfell's heart. He remembered the way his father's eyes had crinkled in quiet pride when Jon mastered his first sword stance. Now those same eyes stared only in memory, and the boy who once sought his father's approval vanished in grief's hungry maw. Responsibility rose in the void. Jon took charge of Vihalaxes' feeding and secret training. He tethered sacks of sand to the dragon's tail to strengthen flight muscles, coaxed it to breathe fire upon damp logs to control its flame. Each dawn he noted growth. Horns sprouting along the crest, fangs lengthening, wingspan broadening wider than two horses abreast. By the time the snows melted fully, the dragon was large enough to carry a man for a heartbeat's glide. Meanwhile, whispers of war drifted like wood smoke from the south. The boy King Joffrey crowned upon a throne of lies, Lord Robb Stark marching banners southward, banners of the direwolf clashing against lions crowned in crimson and gold. Brothers bled brothers in the riverlands, queens played games with small folk lives. And the Iron Islands stirred beneath Balon Greyjoy's salt-stained pride. The realm fissured, and winter had not even bared its true teeth. One moonless night, the Halaxes ascended above Winterfell on silent wings, while Ghost paced below. Jon rode bareback, fingers white-knuckled in the dragon's warm spinal ridges. They soared through a sky of shimmering frost, stars bright as polished steel. From that height, the lanterns of Wintertown shone like a scattering of embers, and the world felt both vast and fragile. Jon understood in that moment what conquest must have looked like to Aegon Targaryen when he first glimpsed Westeros from Balerion's back. 7 crowns just waiting to be gathered. They landed well before dawn, but not before a pair of black feathers drifted down onto the courtyards, spotted at first light by stableboys, who whispered of ravens grown monstrous. Rumor, like wildfire, needed only a spark. Jon knew the North would soon guess his secret. That morning, Maester Luwin found him studying maps in the solar. The old man's chain links rattled softly. "Your brother Robb calls himself king in the North," he said in kindly rebuke. "If dragons truly stir, the North will need unity, not hidden fires." Jon closed the map, hiding the circle drawn around Moat Cailin, that ancient choke point guarding the neck. "We will have it," he said. "But first we must ensure the South cannot starve us or freeze us out." His voice felt heavier, grown into something colder than adolescence. "Your words weigh like a man's," Luwin murmured. "Just be certain your cause is worth their burden." Jon looked beyond the window to the loft's roof, where Vihalax's silhouette stretched dark against morning cloud. "I am." War horns soon echoed across the Barrowlands. Foraging host of Lannister outriders probed the neck, burning hovels for sport, until northern scouts ambushed them beneath Bogman's Crossing. Their blood stained the reeds red. Jon rode south with a vanguard of archers, and witnessed firsthand the chaos that had eaten the kingdom. Burned farms, children glimpsed amid charred beams, corpses strung from weirwood branches as warnings. He returned to Winterfell burdened. At dusk, he crept into the old godswood, knelt before the heart tree, and laid a handful of red leaves upon the snow. Ghost sat at his side. Vihalaxi circled above treetops, wings slicing moonlight. Jon whispered vows of vengeance and guardianship intertwined, promises sworn in a voice equal parts Stark and something older, fiercer. When he emerged, Sansa awaited near the archway, her eyes reflections of the dying sun. "Robb needs every sword," she said softly. "But he will need more than swords when the dragons fly." She paused, as though tasting fear. "I dreamed of black wings over Winterfell, but I wasn't afraid. I felt hope." Jon hesitated. "There is truth in your dream." He told her then everything. The hidden egg, the hatchling now nearing a young wyvern's size, the power coiled in its sinew. Sansa's gasp froze. Yet when she spoke again, her voice held steel. "Then the North has more than hope. It has flame. But fire must be wielded with care, or we become what we fight." She clasped Jon's gloved hand. "Will you be careful, brother?" "I will try." The words felt brittle. Spring's thaw quickened Vihalaxis' growth. Where once Jon had to crouch beneath the loft's beams, now the dragon barely fit inside at all. With each sunrise, black scales thickened, turning glossy like wet obsidian. Horns spiraled back in barbed ridges. Its roar carried across fields, rattling shutters. 2 frightened dairymaids fled the castle, swearing they'd seen a demon perched upon the granary roof, eyes glowing like furnace glass. Secrecy frayed. Jon convened his trusted circle in the ancient Great Hall. Sansa, Samwell, Sir Roderick Castle, and the wildling woman Val, brought south at Jon's request to speak for her freefolk, kin beyond the wall. He revealed Vihalaxes by torchlight. The dragon crouched like living night. Sam's knees nearly buckled. Roderick's sword arm twitched, but did not draw. Val's eyes widened with primal wonder. "Dragons alone conquer," Jon said. "But dragons with hearts that guide them conquer, without losing themselves." He unfurled a plan. Raise new companies sworn not to banners of gold or wolf, but to the promise of justice long denied by southern thrones. Free folk riding beside Karstarks, iron-born rebels disgraced by Balin's wars offering ships in return for a future, unchained by salt tyranny. A dragon host. Roderick stroked his beard. "The lords will balk at fighting beside wildlings. Then remind them wildlings are men robbed of land and name by southern law." Jon answered. "We share ice in our blood. Winter equalizes all." Sam cleared his throat. "And the dragon? If the citadel hears." "I care nothing for the citadel's fear," Jon said. "Let them summon their chains. Fire melts chains." Val laughed, bright and fierce. "We'll ride with you, Lord Snow." She reached to touch Vihalaxia's talon, did not flinch at its molten heat. So the first vow was sworn that night, under timbers older than memory. A pact of wolf, dragon, crow, and freefolk. Summer nights burned in red dusk as Vihalaxes tested his wings across the sky. Jon rode in a saddle Sam designed, harness lashed with direwolf hide, guiding with wordless pressure of knees and silent thought. They banked over the white knife, its waters blazing golden, then soared east to the lonely hills where mountain goats scattered in terror. Jon practiced dives until his muscles ached, learned to trust the dragon's instincts. Lean left when its tail flicked, brace when its chest swelled with flame. They became halves of a single shadow. In the village rounds, stories multiplied. A black wyvern glimpsed above inns. Sheep found seared to bone in distant pastures. A stranger in a hood purchasing barrels of fresh meat. Jon embraced rumor, let fear sharpen caution in Lannister scouts. One dawn, a raven from Moat Cailin arrived. Robb Stark gravely wounded at Ashermark. Lannisters pressing into the Riverlands with wildfire barrels, rumored purchased from pyromancers. Dragonfire, they said, could not be matched, unless the North found flame of its own. Jon's decision needed no counsel. He saddled Vihalaxes, donned blackened mail edged with direwolf silver, and rose into skies streaked vermilion. Ghost paced the battlements, howling as his master vanished among clouds. Flying at speed, the journey took a single night. Jon saw the smoke of camps before dawn, rows of red tents bearing golden lions, siege engines pointed toward River Run's distant towers. He banked low over a nameless ridge, surveying. Beneath, northern outriders battered by weeks of skirmish limped among wounded horses. Robb's banner of the direwolf fluttered tattered on a broken pike. Morale hung by a thread. Jon landed in the dawn's first light. Vihalaxes' claws, gouging the earth beside Robb's command pavilion. Soldiers scattered, weapons raised. Robb staggered from the tent on a cane, frost in his hair. 7 hells, he murmured, awe and fear mingling. Is that? Yes. Jon dismounted. Dragons live again, Robb. And they fight for the North. He clasped his brother's shaking forearm. Let me turn their fear to our cause. Within hours, word spread along trenches. The bastard of Winterfell had returned astride a black dragon, offering fire to break the siege. Near dusk, Jon circled Vihalaxes above the Lannister lines, wings blotting out the setting sun. Trumpets faltered mid-blast. Arrows loosed fell harmless against scale. Jon counted heartbeat after heartbeat, letting terror ripen. Then with Robb's signal, torch raised thrice. Vihalaxes descended. Flame burst in a torrent of black-red. Ziga towers erupted in pillars of green as wildfire stores ignited. Catapults hurled burning shards of themselves into fleeing men. Panic shattered Lannister ranks. Jon strafed the field once, twice, each pass melting steel helms, turning ground to glass. He spared those who threw down arms, steering fire to empty trenches and supply wagons, demonstrating mercy and power, forging awe rather than wanton slaughter. By nightfall, River Run's gates opened, and Robb's host limped inside unharried. Bards would later tell how a single dragon broke 1,000 knights without losing a scale, though Jon's conscience tallied each scream. Yet he could not deny the cold logic. Fear subdued where negotiations failed. Robb's war council knelt around a map, spattered with wine. With dragonfire, Great Jon Umber growled. "We can melt every lion tooth from here to Casterly Rock." Robb glanced at Jon. "But at what cost to peasant fields?" Jon spoke softly. "A dragon is a sword with no sheath. Use me not as a butcher's cleaver, but a scalpel struck swift, cutting at the root so lesser blades need not reap harvests of flesh." "See." Robb's nod carried weight of crown and brotherhood both. "Then you will ride for the heart, King's Landing." Jon's gaze drifted southward, imagining the capital's red walls crumbling beneath black flame. Yet, echoing his father's voice, a question surfaced. "What is victory worth if you burn the kingdom you seek to rule?" He vowed then to temper flame with justice. The dragon host gathered through late summer. Northmen scarred from Whispering Wood marched beside free folk braves draped in furs. Fishermen from White Harbor offered sleek mackerel ships to ferry supplies along coastlines. Even a handful of ironborn misfits, weary of Balin's stubborn pride, swore loyalty for promise of salt-forged freedom. They camped near Moat Cailin, raising fires whose smoke mingled with the hiss of Vihalaxes circling overhead. Sammo concocted a crude cipher to coordinate supply wagons and raven flights, while Sansa drafted manifestos proclaiming a kingdom where wolf and dragon stood united, thrones granted not by birthright alone, but by deeds in defense of the living. Copies found their way into river markets and brothels of Maidenpool, where minstrels set them to melody. "The true king rides black flame," they sang, "an unnamed king." For now, yet hearts guessed his identity. As autumn's breath cooled the marshes, Jon addressed his gathered host from atop a weathered rampart. The speech carried across thousands. He spoke of oaths broken by southern kings, of Ned Stark's blood spilled without trial, of small folk crushed by tax collectors to fund silks for gilded courts. He promised a realm where justice rode wings of flame, yet shielded the innocent from its heat. When he finished, even the crust-eyed wildlings pounded spear butts in thunderous answer. That night, he found Ghost waiting at river's edge, moonlight painting silver on white fur. The direwolf gazed downstream as though seeing all the miles yet to travel. Vihalaxes landed behind them, river mist curling around talons. Jon rested a hand on each beast. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "we ride south together." He felt their answers in silent pulse of bond. Wolf's steady faith, dragon's furnace heart. The road toward the neck emerged at dawn beneath banners of gray and black flame. Ahead lay leagues of tangled marsh, then the Green Fork's lazy bends, Harrenhal's blackened bones, and beyond them, the king's road to the capital. Scouts reported Lannister patrols fortifying causeways with scorpions built to hurl iron-tipped bolts large enough to skewer a wyvern. Jon studied their positions on parchment by campfire's glow, eyes reflecting flame. "We strike after sunset," he told his captains. "Divide our host into 3 columns. The dragon and I will draw fire above the causeway, while you cut their lines at either flank." He traced routes with a charcoal stub. "Speed is our armor. Let fear seize them before they can aim." Val grinned, braids glinting with beadwork. "I lead the left column and show these kneelers how free folk dance under arrows." Roderick Castle saluted with sword raised. "The right will be mine." Jon clasped each wrist. "Ride hard. Spare those who throw down arms. We build tomorrow's realm with converts, not corpses." Night leaked from the eastern horizon. Jon climbed into the saddle as Vihalaxes crouched, muscles coiled. Ghost loped beside, tongue lolling, until the dragon leapt skyward with hurricane downdraft that whipped banners like pennants in a storm. Below, torches flared along Lannister barricades. Ballistae groaned as crews sighted the dark shape blotting stars. Jon tightened grip. One breath. He knew its rhythm now. Two. Vihalaxes spewed a lance of fire that mingled with bolt volleys mid-air, turning them into molten shards raining upon enemy shields. Barricades burst, timbers combusting in chorus. Soldiers fled screaming as columns of Northmen, and free folks surged from mist like wraiths. Jon guided the dragon low enough to scorch ramparts, but not the surrounding reeds, leaving pathways for fleeing men. Panic rippled. Arrows loosed without aim. Within an hour, the causeway lay open, the path south unbarred. At dawn's pale bloom, Jon dismounted among smoldering ruins. He walked among captured Lannister recruits, farm boys clutching rusted spears, trembling. He offered them bread from his own satchel, water from a skin. Some wept. In those tears, he saw the first bricks of a bridge between realms. Autumn deepened. Campfires stretched miles long across the Blackwater Rush's northern bank. King's Landing's red walls glimmered beneath a hazy dusk, towers spearing the sky like blood-tipped thorns. Within those walls, rumor claimed, the Queen Regent barricaded herself with casks of wildfire, vowing to burn the city before surrendering it to bastards or wolves. Jon studied that skyline with stoic calm. He would not let a dragon's fury mirror the Mad King's last night. He summoned envoys, priests of the Seven, Smith's guild leaders, even a whisper seller from Fleabottom who swore allegiance for coin. They dispersed into the city bearing leaflets promising clemency, grain, and abolished debtors' prisons if gates opened peacefully. Some returned alive with tokens of acceptance, a baker's daughter smuggling bread to captured scouts, a septon's quill-scratched blessings. Others vanished. The siege began not with flame, but with song. On the third night, a chorus of small folk gathered atop the roofs in Fleabottom, singing the ballad of Snowborn King. By dawn, the streets echoed with lyrics too many to silence. Inside his command tent, Jon pored over Raven reports. Ghost curled at his feet. Valaxi slept outside, wings draped like black velvet over the hillside. Sansa entered with parchment of her own. Treatise on post-war grain levies, waste taxes, craft guild charters. She unfurled it with quiet pride. A kingdom is more than battles won, she said. Jon smiled, hearing echoes of their mother's wisdom. Distant horns pierced night's calm. Scouts burst through tent flaps. King's Landing's mud gate had been flung open by city watchmen who dragged Lannister officers from their posts. Bells tolled riotously. Jon rose, heart drumming. He saddled Valaxis under a sky startled by dawn's first purple flush. Behind them, columns formed, torches shimmering against armor. Jon inhaled the cold autumn air, tasted both ash yet to come and honey of hope blooming. He thought of Ned Stark's final words left unsaid, of Aegon's dream now reborn in black flame, of vows carved upon a heart tree's bark. The dragon's wings beat once, twice, lifting them toward the capital whose fate perched upon a razor's edge. Jon's silhouette merged with Valaxi's against the rising sun. Man and dragon dark upon the light, flying not as conqueror alone but as guardian, guiding a new dawn across a realm exhausted by night. And though the gates yawned wide, the battle for hearts had only begun. Oh, Ka. A pale rind of moon still clung to the sky when Jon Snow and Valaxis drifted over King's Landing's rooftops, silent as ash on winter wind. Below them the city lay restless, a black quilt of crooked lanes and chimney smoke, pierced by smoldering torchlight. Every step of slate roof, every jutting balcony, every laundry line fluttering between hovels, seemed poised on the cusp of fire or redemption. Bells tolled in uncertain cadence, some rung by pious septons calling down the mother's mercy, others by drunken watchmen whose fear fermented into bravado. The two clappers clashed, forging a music of dread. Jon pressed a gloved palm to the dragon's warm nape, guiding him in a low spiral above the narrow alleys of Fleabottom. Even cloaked in night, he smelled the broth carts, the awful pits, the sour tang of unwashed humanity, nested cheek by jowl with rats. Yet he also heard scattered cheers ripple upward when moonlight brushed Valaxis' wings, a hush of wonder, almost prayerful. Somewhere a child's voice rose, black flame. Then a chorus of smaller throats echoed it as if claiming a star in the sky. He leaned forward and whispered, "Gently now." The dragon banked again, the leather harness creaking as its broad sails dipped to brush the city's warm exhalations. Jon's eyes tracked the mud gate where rebel guards, the city's own, had hanged their Lannister captains from the parapets. Bodies swung like grotesque flags, gold armor glinting faintly in the torchlight. Beneath them, planks had been pried aside to let Jon's first vanguard, Val's freefolk and Umber pikemen, crowd into the streets in disciplined silence. They filed off to secure crossroads and bakeries, leaving behind sacks of fresh barley flour as tokens to the small folk. Fearless, hungry men armed with hammers and rough-wrought axes moved like shades among slumbering houses. Valaxis settled on a vacant granary roof near the Dragon Gate, talons crunching slate. Jon dismounted, cloak snapping in the night wind, and ghosted across adjoining roofs until he reached a rickety stair descending to the cobbles. Ghost materialized from the gloom below. Jon never questioned how the direwolf had slipped inside the walls, and patted at his side as he ducked beneath sagging archways. Inside the swineherd square, lanterns flickered across shuttered stalls, piled with turnips the size of fists. A lone septa knelt by a cracked fountain, scrubbing bloodstains from the stone lip with a rag and lie. She started when Jon approached, seeing only a tall stranger in blackened mail with a direwolf, and the silhouette of a dragon perched above. "Mercy, my lord," she whispered, clutching her rag to her chest. "What's your name?" Jon asked softly. "Septa Alain," she answered, voice trembling. I tend the orphans." Ghost sniffed her hands, then sat. Jon knelt so his eyes met hers. "There will be no slaughter tonight," he said. "Tell the children to stay inside till morning. Bread and water will come with the sunrise." Her lips parted in wary gratitude. "Who speaks these promises?" Jon rose. "Tell them the North remembers, and that its watcher brings fire for warmth, not ruin." He pressed 2 iron stags into her palm, then moved on. The twisting alleys gradually widened toward the street of steel. Smith's forges once bellowed here night and day, but now most were shuttered. Coal bins lay empty after Cersei's levies. One forge remained alight. Hammers rang within like a heartbeat against silence. Jon stepped beneath the arch. Inside, amidst sparks and sweating apprentices, a broad-shouldered woman struck a sword blank that glowed cherry red. She glared up. "Shops closed to thieves," she barked. "I'm no thief," Jon said. "I need a blacksmith bold enough to shoe a dragon in iron and honor." She paused mid-swing. Only one fool could ask that on a night like this. Then her sternness cracked. "You're Snow, aren't you? They say Ned Stark's pup rides the Black Dread's spawn." Jon inclined his head. "Just Jon. And the dragon is Valaxis." She set aside the hammer, wiping soot from her brow. "I'm Salar the Anvil. I don't bend knee easy, but I'll forge for the man who feeds my district and hangs no child for a loaf of bread." Her gaze flicked to Ghost. "I'll have your direwolf guard the forge while I work. Keep cutthroats off my apprentices." Jon smiled. "Done." He left her with a pouch of silvers and promises of raw northern iron coming downriver. As he stepped back onto the street, dawn's gray fingers touched the city's highest spires. Faint birdsong drifted from the river. The first stage of occupation was secure. A crisp horn call echoed from the direction of the old gate. Sir Roderick's signal that Sansa had entered the city with retainers and parchment seals ready to grant amnesties. Jon quickened pace toward the Red Keep, whose distant towers now glowed coral in the newborn sun. Arrows bristled along its walls, but Lannister archers peered nervously at the sky, not at city streets. Jon imagined rumors swirling already: the bastard wolf astride a living furnace, a queen hoarding wildfire casks under the throne. He took the narrow stair known as Kinslayer's Rise, spiraling up from the fishmonger's stalls to the killmaster's courtyard, where 4 scorpions snarled on wheeled platforms. Their crews were green boys trembling behind lion-crested helms. Jon stepped from shadow, Ghost at his flank. "Lay down strings," he ordered. "Bolt the crossbeams. My dragon will not strike unless struck." One captain's lip curled. "Dragon or no? We serve Queen Cersei." "Does Queen Cersei serve you?" Jon asked. "Will she feed your families when the granaries are ash? Ask yourselves, is this city hers or yours?" "Damn?" The young men wavered. A rumble overhead drew their gazes. Vihalaxis soared briefly into view, wing membranes catching dawn light like stained glass. The crews lowered their weapons. Jon had no need to threaten. Awe accomplished what brutality might not. He pressed through echoing corridors lined with crimson drapes, always climbing, until he reached the Tower of the Hand. There, outside the council chamber, Grand Maester Pacel stood wringing his beard, flanked by 2 frightened pages. The old man's trembling voice rose. The queen has barricaded herself in Maegor's Holdfast. 6 thick gates, each barred. She refuses parley. She speaks of wildfire stockpiled beneath the sept as a last resort. Jon studied the maester's watery eyes. Tell her I will meet her at dawn's 3rd bell by the Blackwater parapet. Swift, private, unarmed. Save for my wolf. If she declines, I begin rooting out every cache of wildfire, until one cache cracks, and the dragon's flame carries the rest to the god's judgment. Pacel swallowed. You threaten the whole city. I guard it, Jon said. Deliver the message. 3 bells pealed. Jon stood on the high curtain wall overlooking the Blackwater rush. The river glimmered jade and gold where early sun kissed its ripples. Ghost prowled behind him, teeth flashing white. Far below, sails striped in gray and black eased through the harbor mouth. White harbor cogs bearing grain, fresh watercress, and pickled herring. Sansa's answer to hunger long wielded by Lannister tacksmen. Boots clacked on stone. Cersei Lannister emerged between 2 Kingsguard in scorched, half-plate. Her hair, once spun gold, lay ragged about sunken cheeks. She smelled of stale wine and sleepless hours. Yet her eyes still burned green flame. So, the wolf bastard thinks himself a dragon lord. Jon said nothing, studying the boat's slow glide on the river, measuring breaths until silence became her discomfort. She twitched. I hold wildfire enough to baptize this city in green hellfire. My alchemists stand ready beneath Aegon's high hill. Surrender or we all perish together. Jon turned his gaze toward the midday sun. Where were your alchemists when small folk starved? When you levied a loaf's worth of copper for a crumb? You threatened to burn those you could not feed. That is no queen. Her jaw tightened. What would you know of crowns? You were born in your father's shadow, a stain he carried to the grave. Perhaps, Jon answered evenly. But a shadow can darken a queen's sunlit lies. He stepped nearer. Ghost mirrored the motion, hackles rising. Open your vaults, surrender your throne, and stand trial for the crimes you name necessity. Do it, and I promise no blade will touch your children. Benda. She laughed, brittle. My last child is dead, buried by rebels. What leverage do you think you have? Jon drew a folded parchment from his sleeve and handed it to her. She frowned. The seal was lion gold. Breaking it, she scanned the neat script, and color drained from her face. Sir Jaime is alive, Jon said. He passed into our lines last night under Stark banner. He asks safe conduct to the wall to take the black for every oath he broke. I have agreed on condition you surrender today. Cersei's hands shook around the parchment. Jon recognized the dagger of grief, twisting anew. He would cast aside family for shame. She hissed. For absolution, Jon said. Something you might yet see. She wavered. Ghost's low growl rose above the lapping river. Then Cersei squared her shoulders, a queen's mask sliding back. No, I choose fire. She turned, stride snapping fury. Jon exhaled slowly as she vanished toward Maegor's Holdfast. He looked skyward and whistled 2 sharp notes. Balerion answered with a roar that juddered stones beneath his feet. Maester Samwell and Salar, the anvil met Jon in the yard below. Sansa lingered too, her ink-blotted cuffs testament to hours spent drafting new laws. Her expression firm despite worry lines. Jon said only, "She will burn us all." Sam's face blanched. Sansa's eyes hardened. Salar hefted a newly forged hook claw of black steel. Salar spoke first. "Then we unmake her fire." Jon led them to the cellars beneath the Red Keep, where labyrinthine corridors spider-webbed into darkness. They passed under arches streaked with niter, past stacks of dusty casks marked with the alchemist's sigil, coiled flames. Here wildfire slumbered in clay pots, its liquid shifting aglow like tainted emeralds. Sam unrolled a map he'd sketched from stolen alchemist records. 27 caches, he murmured, quill-tapping each X, most sealed behind iron grates older than the Doom. "If even one shatters..." "We work in silence," Jon cut in. "No torches, only glowstones soaked in nightfire salts." Salar distributed crystals faintly luminescent. Ghost sniffed them and sneezed. They split into pairs. Salar with her apprentices, Sam with 2 novice maesters from the city, Jon and Ghost alone. Sansa remained above to manage courtyards, dispatching grain wagons through the Gate of the Gods to keep mobs occupied. Jon padded down a slanted passage, ducking stalactite roots from the hill's heart. He counted each step. Memories of Bran's stories of tunnels collapsing during Maegor's reign haunted him. At last, iron bars blocked the way. Carven lions rusted to indistinct lumps. Jon slipped a pick fashioned from Balerion steel needle wire into the lock, coaxing tumblers until a dull click echoed. Beyond lay a chamber, slick with condensation, lit by ghostly green shimmering from urns arrayed like soldiers at attention. Crates of oily rags and fuses rested amid them. Signs of Cersei's frantic last preparations. Jon knelt, scanning the array. The slightest spark here. He withdrew a stopper of river mud, laced with fine sand, spreading it across each lid seam in a thick band to stifle pressure. Next he wound damp leather thong around fuse coils, sealing them with beeswax. Ghost watched, tail twitching. A soft growl warned of footsteps. A robed pyromancer stepped into view, face half hidden under a hood spattered with dried flux. His eyes glimmered. "Meddling fool," he hissed. "The Queen's will is wildfire. You cannot dampen destiny." He raised a flint striker. Jon lunged. The pyromancer's arm arced downward. Flint sparking. Ghost collided with him first, fangs crushing bone. The spark died in a spray of blood as the man screamed. Jon pressed a mailed gauntlet over the pyromancer's mouth, till the scream faded. He dragged the corpse away from the jars. Heart hammering, he whispered, "Good wolf," scratching Ghost's ear. Then he resumed sealing, hand steady despite the tremor in his chest. Overground, explosions boomed, distant but distinct. Jon's head snapped upward, dust sifted from the ceiling. He fastened the last fuse and sprinted back up tunnels, Ghost leading by scent of fresh air. They burst into sunlight on the western parapet, just as Vihalaxes loosed a deafening roar across the river. Thick smoke billowed from the direction of the Sept of Baelor. A single tower's spire lay shattered, stone rubble strewn like giant's dice. Wildfire tongues licked green where debris had struck a hidden cache. But the main blast had not reached the city interior, thanks to Sam, Salar, and others diffusing stores. Vihalaxes swooped low, singed wings beating furiously as if searching for Jon. He whistled once, and the dragon landed atop a stable yard, crushing empty stalls. Jon swung into the saddle. Ghost leapt to join him, balancing deftly between ridges. They ascended over the inner ward toward Maegor's holdfast, whose barred gates gleamed gold in late morning sun. On its battlements stood Cersei, white dress whipping. In her hands she held a cask of wildfire cracked at the brim, glowing menacingly. 2 remaining Kingsguard flanked her, swords drawn. Jon hovered just beyond bowshot. The Queen hefted the cask over the parapet, voice ringing shrill. "One more step, bastard, and we all sizzle in green light. Tears cut salty tracks through soot on her cheeks. Step back, call off this farce. Eon's yaw. Set. He addressed the king's guard, not her. You swore to protect the realm and its people. Does that vow still hold? Sir Boros Blount trembled, sword wavering. Sir Lyman Mallory clenched his jaw. Neither answered. Jon slowly unclipped a pouch at his belt and emptied its contents into his palm. Twin golden lion miniatures. Joffrey's last toys, he said softly. Recovered from the nursery. Even kings deserve childhood. He met Cersei's eyes. What memory shall you leave yours? Her grip faltered. Emerald fluid slid along the cask's lip, hissing where it touched air. For a heartbeat wind carried only the distant cries of gulls. Then she sank to her knees, cask slipping from numb hands to rest between stones. Tears spilled unchecked. Take her, she rasped to her guards. Sir Boros dropped his sword and rushed to seize the queen. Sir Lyman sagged in relief, shouting for pikemen to unbar the gates. Jon guided Vahalaxes to the battlement, landing within sword's reach. He dismounted, approached, and knelt before Cersei as soldiers watched in astonished silence. For your surrender, he murmured. You receive a fair trial by your peers. I will not see another Targaryen's madness in my reign. He glanced at the wildfire cask. Nor wildfire's ghost. She raised red-rimmed eyes, hatred spent, only emptiness left. Whatever judgment comes. She whispered, let it be swift. By dusk, the lion banners had been pulled down from the Red Keep's highest tower and set aflame in a controlled pyre upon the shore. Sansa presided from the parapet, reading new decrees. Abolition of debtors' prison, quartered bread rations for every household, amnesty for surrendered gold cloaks, and convening of a great council 7 days hence to choose the realm's new ruling order. Jon stood behind her, armor still blackened, a smear of wildfire across one greave. Vahalaxes perched on the hill of Rhaenys, watchful, wingtips fanning embers from the burnt banners. Below, small folk gathered, some kneeling in thanks, others merely bewildered to still be alive. They carried lanterns fashioned of stained bottle glass, green and amber, turning the evening into a living mosaic. When Sansa finished, she stepped aside. Robb Stark, lean and war-scarred, took center amid cheers. He raised a hand for silence. This victory is not mine, nor my brother's alone. It belongs to every soul who refused tyranny. We will rebuild under new laws that bind lord and peasant alike, oath and crown alike. Now. A cheer surged. Then Robb turned, gesture inviting Jon forward. Jon's breath caught. He had never sought a stage. Yet he stepped beside his brother. The crowd quieted, as though even the sea held its tide. I was born a bastard, Jon began, voice carrying across the open court. Raised in snow's shadow. Tonight, I stand not as conqueror, but custodian. The dragon's flame can raise or ford. I vow to forge, walls to shelter, hearths to warm, fields to prosper. The North remembers its oaths, and the dragon keeps them. Merin? Silence heavy as fresh snow. Then a lone voice cried, King Snow! Another answered, Long live the true king. The chant grew, echoing between towers, swelling like surf. Jon's cheeks flushed, but he lifted a hand, palm open in restraint. Titles are lighter than crowns, he called. Let council decide who bears that weight. Still, the chanting persisted. Sansa touched his elbow, eyes shining yet calm, ready to guide him through coming storms. That night, while revelry buzzed in taverns liberated from lion levies, Jon withdrew to the God's Wood transplanted centuries ago into the Red Keep's shadow. There, amid cypress and imported heart trees grown thin in southern soil, he knelt beneath a weirwood, whose sap gleamed like starlight. Ghost sat guard at the periphery. Vahalaxes lay coiled outside the hedge, head resting near the gate, black eyes reflecting distant lanterns. Jon whispered into the pale face. Father, I did what the realm needed. Tell me I've not lost myself." Wind rustled red leaves in hushed reply, as though Ned Stark's patience watched from somewhere beyond. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Sam appeared with a satchel of books and ledgers. "I thought you might want these," he said. "The High Septon's archive reserved for the king. It holds every lineage, debt record, and law revision stretching back 2 centuries. Jon half smiled. "My coronation gift, then?" Scrolls and sleepless nights. Sam flushed. Knowledge crowns a wise mind greater than gold crowns a foolish head. Jon accepted a scroll, unrolling crisp vellum beneath moonlight. Its ink described a prophecy of ice and fire once whispered by a woods witch to Aegon the Unworthy. A king reborn in snow, born by dragon flame, destined to unite a realm shattered by lions and roses. Jon huffed a rueful laugh. Prophecies spin truths like spider silk. Sticky and fragile. Sam nodded. They guide but cannot bind. He gestured to Valaxia's sleeping bulk. The dragon grew because you nourished him, trained him, tempered him with mercy. Dragons rule none but those who earn their trust. Jon's gaze softened. Perhaps that is the crown worth taking. The one a dragon lays at your feet. He glanced skyward where stars wheeled like silent witnesses. Somewhere beyond those pinpricks, winter gathered its breath again, and far in the frozen north, horns may yet sound warning of an ancient enemy stirring. Jon's path, crowned or not, would soon pull him toward that darkness. But tonight, in the hush of a conquered city that had not burned, he allowed himself one beat of quiet hope. He closed his eyes, feeling Ghost's warm flank press against him, hearing Valaxia's low rumble of contentment, tasting sea salt wind heavy with possibility. From street to sept, from forge to throne room, King's Landing exhaled relief, as if a breath held for 17 years finally released. The weight of the realm settled across Jon's shoulders, neither crushing nor light. It was the weight of a sword he had chosen to lift, forged of wolf's loyalty and dragon's fire. He would bear it while knees steadied, and heart remembered each burned village, each child's trembling hands, each torn oath needing redress. For that, he would wake before dawn and write laws with Sansa, plan grain routes with Salor, scheme alliances with Sam, and teach Valaxias to scorch only iron, never hope. Tomorrow, the Great Council would convene, and the world would angle its gaze toward this black-winged king who never asked for crowns. Tomorrow, envoys from Dorne, the Reach, and the Stormlands would dispute borders and trade. Tomorrow, the cry might rise again for war at the Wall or rebellion in Old Valeria's shadow. But tonight, Jon allowed the quiet. He opened his eyes to the weirwood's silent face one last time, and somewhere in the rustle of leaves, he imagined his father's answer. A silent nod of approval, a ghost of warmth on winter wind, and the promise that so long as honor burned as bright as dragonfire, the north, and all beneath its sky, would endure. Torchlight flickered along the marble corridor outside the newly convened council chamber, casting wavering shadows over statues of past kings, whose faces seemed to watch each petitioner draw near. Jon Snow lingered beneath a narrow lancet window that framed dawn's first pale ribbons, hands clasped at the small of his back. The city below murmured with cautious industry. Smiths rekindling quiescent forges, vendors sweeping thresholds, fisherfolk rowing skiffs through river mist now tinged gold. In that hush before politics woke fully, he tasted iron on the air, as though the red keep itself exhaled centuries of bloodshed slowly cooling at last. Inside, long oak benches lined 3 sides of a circular hall newly cleared of Lannister banners, where snarling lions once glowered down. Plain stone walls now bore only a single carving. A direwolf entwined with twin dragons, one wing white marble, the other black obsidian. Sansa's idea, crafted overnight by stonemasons eager to please a changing tide. Below that emblem, counselors arranged sheaves of parchment, sealing wax, quills, and cups of watered wine. No gilded cups today. Jon had sent the gold to Salor's smithy to fund tools for the ravaged street of steel. When he stepped over the threshold, every eye turned. Lord Mathis Rowan of Golden Grove inclined his head stiffly. He had arrived with the Reach delegation bearing baskets of pomegranates, a subtle reminder that fertile lands yet lay beyond Dragonfire's reach. Lady Asha Greyjoy lounged in salt-stiff leather, boots on bench, a shark's grin daring anyone to challenge her seat. Sir Denis Mallister represented the Riverlands in grey mail still spattered from the siege. Near him Maester Samwell shuffled notes, cheeks flushed with nervous energy, and beside the empty high seat stood Sansa Stark, calm as deep water, quill poised. Jon nodded to each delegate, yet did not claim the high seat. Instead, he settled on a plain stool nearer the circle's edge. Quizzical murmurs flickered. He raised one hand for quiet. "I sit as guardian," he said, voice carrying across stone. "This throne will weigh heavier than any one man's shoulders. Let us forge a crown of laws before we fashion one of metal." He motioned to Sansa. She unfurled a vellum scroll, her draft charter for the realm. No pomp, only measured inkstrokes promising rights to trial, limitation of lordly levies, grain tariffs rerouted toward winter stores, a coin tithe for orphanages in every city, and an oath that any future monarchy submit itself to a council's censure by 2/3 vote. As she read, the chamber's mood rippled between skepticism and dawning intrigue. Lord Rowan stroked his beard when tariffs were mentioned. Lady Asha raised an eyebrow at orphanage tithes, then shrugged, conceding storms could not wash away all flotsam. When Sansa finished, Samwell cleared his throat and presented ledgers showing grain yields, harbor tariffs, and projected treasury growth should war expenses cease. Numbers lent the charter bones of pragmatism. Quills scratched as lords recalculated ambitions against new math. Jon studied faces. Wary acceptance from the Reach, guarded hope from Riverlords, hungry calculation from Ironborn. Only Dorne remained absent. Their prince, Quentyn Martell, still marched north under peace banners after word of Cersei's fall reached Sunspear too late. Jon made note to send swift riders with escort. Debate unfurled through the morning, civil yet tense. Questions of succession, precedence, and faith's place in governance. Jon answered seldom, letting voices weigh themselves. At midday, a page burst in breathless. The High Septon requested immediate audience, bearing grievous news from the Sept of Baelor ruins. Jon rose, pulse quickening, and beckoned the council. Together they crossed the courtyard where sunlight glanced off blackened marble shards. Two columns still stood amid the rubble, their once gilded saints charred. Between them knelt brothers of the faith, sifting ash for relics. Near a cracked foundation stone lay the High Septon, face drawn, robes singed. He rose painfully at Jon's approach. "My lord," he rasped. "Beneath the sept we discovered something abhorrent." He extended a trembling hand, wrapped around a shattered obsidian dagger, whose blade bore swirling glyphs Jon recognized from old Nan's frost-trembled tales. Symbols of the great other beyond the wall. This lay in a chamber bricked behind false walls, older than the sept, older than Aegon's conquest. We found skeletal remains arranged in a circle, skulls scored by runes. Whoever kept them practiced sorceries of night. A chill crept beneath Jon's jerkin. He took the dagger with care. Its edge burned cold against his palm, a wrongness humming like distant horn notes of winter. Images flashed. Hardhome's black coast. Still frozen giants, eyes of sapphire flame. He clenched his jaw. "Seal the chamber," he ordered. "Guard it with lanterns day and night. No one touches what's inside." He turned to Sansa and Sam. "We ride north at sunset." The council followed, consternation in their footfalls. Jon led them back to the chamber, lifted the cold blade so all might see. "I hoped we'd give the realm respite," he said, voice low. "But death beyond the wall stirs again, and its servants walked these stones while kings bickered. War of ice returns." Faces paled. Lord Rowan muttered a prayer. Asha's grin vanished, replaced by steel. Sir Denis touched the river-run trout on his breastplate, and stared as if seeing old Riverland's winters again. Jon continued. I do not gather armies for conquest alone. The dragon host rides to shield every hearth from night's teeth. I ask not for your fealty to me, but for your swords beside mine beyond the wall. Silence coiled until Sam spoke, quiet but sure. The histories say the long night's end came when men united under one pact of dawn. If we stand divided, the dead will harvest us one by one. Rowan exhaled. Golden Grove's orchards mean little in endless night. The Reach will supply grain and bowmen. Asha cracked her knuckles. Ironborn fear no ghost. Give me rivercraft, and I'll patrol every creek from salt pans to the shivering sea. Sir Denis's baritone joined them. Riverrun shall levy engineers to raise bulwarks along the gift. Consensus knitted within heartbeats, born not of loyalty, but of dread deeper than banners. Jon dipped his head, gratitude unspoken yet felt. Prepare by fortnight's end. Civilians will remain under Charter's guardianship. Sansa oversees the city. Sam coordinates supply. I march for Winterfell tomorrow. Night fell swift. In the stables below Maker's Holdfast, Jon fitted fresh steel plates to Valaxia's saddle. Salar's newest work etched with runic wards. Ghost padded circles in straw. Restless. Jon's mind jousted with memories. Corin Halfhand's frost-cracked lips warning of free-folk winds. I grit his red hair melting in torchlight. Mance Rayder's horn cliché of unity. All bells chimed the same note. Winter's hunger swallows all divisions. He stroked Vihalaxis's scale, felt furnace warmth answer, and murmured, We fly home. Before dawn, Vihalaxis soared northward on winds crisp as apple skin. Shadow-streaking farmlands where barley ripened late, after ashes fell upon soil. Beneath, the host marched. Gray winds remaining pups pulling carts, Karstark spearmen trudging beside Manderley crossbowmen, ironborn skiffs hugging coastlines laden with pitch. Each sunrise found them further from soft autumn earth and nearer to palisades of frost. At Moat Caelin's marsh strangled ruins, Jon paused 3 days, sending Ghost with messages along wolf trails to House Reed. Howland Reed emerged from green fog at twilight, brown cloak dripping bogwater. The Cranaglord bowed low, eyes wise and distant. Old stories wake, he said. I dreamed a kite of black glass, broke from southern sky to spear the moon. Your blade of dawn must strike first, the neck stands with you. Memden. Their words wove under moss-hung trees until moon sank. When Reed departed, he left bundles of poisoned frog spears, vials of greywater salve to stave off frostbite, and 3 Cranog scouts silent as herons. As the host pressed on, Jon rode ahead with a vanguard of Umbers and free-folk eagle riders scouting with trained gyrfalcons. Dawn on the 5th day found them cresting a ridge from which the white sprawl of Winterfell's walls shimmered. Smoke curled from rebuilt chimneys. Ramparts bore banners half direwolf, half dragon silhouette. Within the courtyard, Sansa marshaled wagons of cured pork and wool cloaks for the north's rag-clad smallfolk, now streaming to fortress safety. Jon dismounted before the weirwood door leading to Father's crypts, the door he had first slipped through seeking Balerion's egg. He descended candlelit steps, Ghost at heel. Vihalaxis perched atop the broken tower's crown. Cold air carried faint scent of dust and cedar. He halted at Lyanna's statue, the secret entry still sealed by cunning gears. Resting his hand against stone, he whispered, Mother I never knew, guide the fire I bear. The crypt stones remained mute, but heart where leaves rustled far above, as though breath traveled deep into earth. He ascended to find Robb emerging from the armory, right leg splinted in ironwood but eyes bright. They embraced. Foreheads pressed briefly in shared grief and resolve. Riverrun stands tall again, Robb murmured. But I sense wind shifting colder each night. Jon nodded. They had no need for more words. Council met again in Winterfell's hall, now hung with patchwork of returning houses. Glover, Mormont, Reed, even a peace banner from last hearth where Umbers mourned kin lost south but rallied still. Maester Luwin read reports of disappearing wildling hamlets beyond the wall. of rangers who never returned, of farmers near Queenscrown finding snowmelt turned to brittle frost overnight, though it was not yet deep winter. Word also came of a fire-red comet flicking across Skago's sky, omen once foretelling dragons reborn. Jon listened, mind-mapping each worry. He tasked Val and free folk chiefs to ride tamed elk through haunted forest, gather clans to Castle Black. He ordered Glover Sawyers to fell black spruce for palisades along the Gift. He drafted ravens to Old Town urging archmaesters to send obsidian, though he doubted their cooperation. While scribes flew quills and soldiers sharpened picks, Jon visited the rookery tower where battered ravens cooed uneasily. There Sam waited by a brazier, face drawn. "Scroll from White Harbor," he said, handing parchment. "Lady Alice Karstark reports ships vanished near Skane. Crewless hulls found drifting. Decks rimed with frost, though sun sat high. Jon's gut twisted. Walkers testing coasts." He turned to the open arch and saw Vihalaxes guarding the sky, wings beating easier now in northern air. Dragonfire could melt White's ranks, yet Night's king wielded more than corpses, storms and dread unending. Jon's dream returned, a wall of darkness devouring torches faster than dragonflame could relight them. That night, he walked outside ramparts, alone, save for Ghost. Stars shimmered knife-bright. He crouched, buried fingers in snow, feeling its grainy bite. "Am I strong enough?" he asked the stillness. Ghost nudged his shoulder, amber eyes fierce. From distant tower, Vihalaxes answered with a rumble rolling like distant thunder. "Yes." At dawn, council reconvened. Snow drifted beyond windows, earlier than summer's past. Jon addressed them. "We march for the wall in 2 weeks. Yet our lines stretch thin. We need hearts and hands of every holdfast. So tomorrow I fly east beyond the shivering sea." Murmurs rose. Sansa frowned. "Essos, Ashai, Karth, Volantis. All harbor sell sails," Jon said. "But I seek dragon scale, not coin. The Red Priests call me Azor Ahai Reborn. Let them prove faith by sending rubies and glass to forge spears." Rowan protested distances. Asha mocked priestly debts. But Sam spoke. "Sailors whisper of Valyrian forges reignited on Dragonstone's ruins by smiths following your banner. Old spells, they say, waken under comet light." Jon sensed that rumor. He would fly first to Dragonstone, gather obsidian, then cross the narrow sea seeking fire priests' caches. Council agreed reluctantly. Sansa pressed a locket into his palm, carved with direwolf howling at eclipsed moon. "When doubt chills you, open it," she said. He nodded, understanding without words. Preparations blurred days. Val drilling wildling spearmen alongside umbers whose jests turned competitions to laughter. Salar forging arrowheads tipped with dragon glass. Maesters steeping trench fire oils to burn blue. Nights Jon spent teaching Vihalaxes to strafe narrow canyon passes without flame spill. Ghost chased them across ridges, a white shadow guiding black. On the eve of Jon's departure, snowfall thickened. He walked ramparts one last time, scanning torches bobbing along yard where children played beneath watchful guards, where free folk shared stew with highborn pages. Small seeds of unity sprouted beneath frost. He inhaled crisp air heavy with pine and chimney smoke, and faintly, something colder. The scent of snow unmelting, of breath stilled midair. Far north, beyond horizons unseen, night gathered. At dawn, Jon climbed into saddle. Sansa, Robb, Val, Sam, and Reed stood below. Snowflakes danced around Vihalaxes' horned crown. Jon clasped each farewell. Robb wordlessly pressed a carved weirwood token into his gauntleted hand, a wolf inlaid with jet dragon eye. Jon tucked it beside Sansa's locket. He addressed the gathered host. "Hold fast against fear. When I return, we ride beyond the wall, not as 7 kingdoms, but as one." His breath steamed. Thousands of helms dipped in silent salute. Vihalaxes leapt. Wind tore cloaks. Ghost bayed once, echo carrying into forest gloom. Jon steered southeast, dragon wings scattering dawn clouds like gulls. They crossed Neckmarsh in hours, soared over Widow's Watch where White Harbor galleys loaded grain. Sailors craned upward, hats flying as shadow swept decks. Beyond Bite Bay, open sea glinted. Winds sharpened, salt spray crystallizing on Vihalaxia's scale. Yet dragonfire within kept frost at bay. Jon charted course by starlight once sun dipped, a dark flight above wave crests moonlit silver. On horizon Dragonstone's serrated silhouette emerged, spires like talons of basalt. Smoke spiraled from its volcano throat, signs of forge fires rekindled. Jon circled, descending through sulphurous haze into courtyard, where red priests in scarlet robes knelt, faces glowing. At their fore stood Melisandre of Ashai, eyes alight. She bowed low. Azor Ahai returns astride Night Flame, she intoned. Lord of Light has shown your shadow in his fires. She gestured to courtyard wagons stacked with obsidian ingots, crates of ruby dust, scrolls of fire runes. Take these gifts. Temper night with dawn. Jon dismounted warily. Memories of her past games flickered. Kings burned for prophecy. He spoke evenly. No children burned for these stones. None, my king, she replied, lips curving almost human. Only dormant fires woken beneath stone. He nodded. Then your faith buys trust, not allegiance. She accepted this, unblinking. Next dawn saw Vihalaxis depart laden with netted crates, lashed along harness. They hugged narrow straits eastward, crossing Myrish merchant lanes where galleys dipped pennants in silent deference, or veered wide, fearful of flame. Over Lysa's turquoise shallows, Jon glimpsed schools of silverfish scattering like coins spilled on glass. By twilight they sighted Volantis, black walls straddling the Rhoyne's mouth. Fires burned atop temple towers, priests chanting as if sensing arrival. Jon landed outside Eastern Gate beside Elephant Gate's cracked tusk. Red priests emerged, led by High Priest Benero draped in shimmering flamed silk, eyes white with cataract, yet burning inside. Benero raised hands to sky, proclaiming Valyrian phrases that rolled like thunder. Obsidian knives were presented, coffer lids heavy with star metal. He spoke of a fleet of Volantine triremes pledged to sail for Westeros bearing refugees willing to fight. Jon accepted but raised caution. No slave shall set foot on North soil in chains. Benero smiled. Azor Ahai frees the enslaved by sword of dawn. Jon hoped those words would hold when gold changed hands. After 5 days and nights of negotiation, he departed east no further, for news reached him of Euron Greyjoy's silence, raiding Tall Trees Town, heading north with a fleet of black sails. Ironborn blood needed to answer for old crimes. Jon angled back across the summer sea, hugging Dorna's coast where Quentyn Martell's host pressed slowly north under banners of sun and spear. Velaxi swooped low, Jon dropping a sealed parchments promising safe passage and command seats within allied council. Martell knights looked up in wonder. Some knelt. Others ran. Storms battered them over Shipbreaker Bay. Lightning webs flickered, yet Valaxis rode currents with fierce joy, roaring back at thunder. Jon clung tight, mind drifting to memories of first timid flights beneath Winterfell moons. Dragon and rider had grown. One dawn they spotted a grim silhouette off Cape Wrath. Silence, her prow carved into screaming kraken, sails wet black. Around her clustered longships, decks crawling with marauders. Fireships lay ready, pitchpots stacked. Jon banked higher, scanning. On distant shore, villages smoldered, smoke columns marking path of cruelty. Rage flared. He guided Vihalaxis into a steep dive. Wind screamed. At 300 feet flames blossomed from the dragon's throat. A controlled jet searing mast tops, igniting rigging. Longships erupted, timbers splintering. Yet silence veered swift, nimbly avoiding first pass. Ballistae cranked. Huge harpoons hissed upward. One slammed into Valax's right wing, tearing membrane. Jon felt lurch. Dragon howled, but wings beat on. He banked hard. Another bolt grazed tail. shattering against obsidian scale. Jon spotted Euron on quarterdeck, arms spread, laughing amid chaos. The pirate king shouted unheard words at the sky. Jon signaled sharp, pushing knees. Valaxi shed altitude, then swung beneath Silence's stern, banking to port. Jon drew Longclaw, Varian blade glinting, and sliced the winch cables holding anchor chains. Chains whipped free, lashing rails. Crew toppled overboard into flame-lit waves. Euron's laughter turned to curses. Valaxi's reared, fire roaring again. This time Jon guided flame along deck centerline, sparing hull but burning sailcloth and masts. Smoke swallowed curses. Silence stalled. Skeleton of charred beams. Jon withstood the urge to finish them. Better to cripple than sink. Let survivors carry fear back to Pite. They limped north, wing injury slowing. On Dragonstone healers stitched raw membranes with silk steel thread under Salar's guidance, while red priests anointed wounds with fire oil that hissed on scale, but sealed cracks. 3 days of rest. Jon penned letters to Winterfell reporting victory, and to Asha warning Pike rebellion. At last, Valaxi stretched healed wings and launched once more, bearing holds of dragonglass spearheads and ruby-flecked chainmail for elite guard Sam dubbed Dawnflame. They crossed Cape Kraken quick under clear skies, air crispening by league until snowflakes again kissed nostrils. Castle Black came into view. Black stone dwarfed by white walls soaring into clouds. Fires dotted parapet, watch beacons newly lit. As Jon descended into courtyard, rangers flocked, dressed not only in black, but in patchwork of freefolk furs, northern green, even shipsail cloaks. The Night's Watch and freefolk alike had answered Val's call. Lord Commander Ed Tollett clapped Jon's gauntlets, wry smile faint. "We ran out of soup bowls," he quipped, gesturing to throngs. Jon laughed, heart swelling. "Then, we share cups." He embraced Tollett, scanning faces for old brothers. Saw Dolorous Ed's dour grin, saw Iron Emmet's scarred brow, even saw Satin's soft gaze hardened by war. Over next fortnight, ramparts rang with hammer blows. Obsidian-embedded spear points lined racks. Salar forged scorpion ballista shafts tipped in black glass. Carpenters braced wildling sledges to carry dragonglass mines across ice fields. Maester Aemon's empty quarters became command map room, where Jon, Val, Robb arrived via Raven message and days-long ride, and Howland Reed plotted. Scouts reported undead columns massing at the ruined hold of Icemark, 20 leagues east of Shadow Tower. Giant silhouettes moved among them, whites of mammoths and thawed giants. Snowstorms unnatural crawled ahead, blotting stars even on new moon. Worse, at their rear, blue hellfire whirlwinds signaled Night King's lieutenants riding undead dragons, stolen from some forgotten burial ground of Valyria's lost scions. At least 2 drakes spotted, wings ribbed with ice crystals, exhaling frost flame capable of shattering stone. Jon listened to this and felt Longclaw's weight heavier. Valaxis rumbled, nostrils emitting embers as if senses tasted enemy flame. A dawn like steel dawned. The great horn on Wall's height blasted. 3 long, from Tower of Shadows. Every heart froze. Jon ascended narrow steps carved into ice. Valaxis perched where Wall's crown could bear weight. From the vantage he saw it. Horizon to horizon, a storm wall black and blue roiling. Within it legions of pale figures advancing. Glints of ice blades caught red sunrise like malevolent stars. Trumpets answered. Torches lit, oi. Jon raised arm high. Drummers along battlements pounded dirges that bled into warrior hearts. Beside him, Robb leaned on spear, legs set but determined. Val notched obsidian arrow, braid whipping wind. Ghost bared fangs, white fur bristling. Jon spoke, soft yet steel. "Night comes, and we meet it with dawn." He vaulted into saddle, canvas wings emblazoned with wolf and fire sigils snapping. Valaxis beat upward, joined by flights of giant ravens bearing wildfire gourds. Behind them scorpion crews cranked lines, freefolk slung dragonglass bola, and Northmen horns roared. They descended from the wall like storm-born swords, flame and obsidian poised to carve hope in darkness. Snow churned into white maelstrom beneath dragon's fire. Ice crunched under boots of men who once knelt to different banners, now shouting one cry: "For the living!" And high above, amid swirling death and dawn's fragile light, Jon Snow felt both terror and an exultation fierce as wildfire, an understanding that destiny was forged not by prophecy's chains, but by every heartbeat choosing mercy over ruin, every blade raised for neighbor over crown. He guided Vihalaxes into the rising gale, long cloak snapping, knowing the battle ahead would test every vow and dream. Yet within his tunic Sansa's locket warmed, Robb's wolf token pressed against chest, and somewhere beyond cloud his father's silent nod still steadied his grip. Dragonfire met frost. Screams split air. The war for dawn began. Pam. Snow swallowed all color as the vanguard of the dead surged toward the wall, a dull roar of brittle limbs grinding ice to powder beneath their advance. Their formation stretched horizon to horizon, a glacial tide broken only by taller silhouettes. White giants bearing uprooted pines for clubs and mammoths draped with skeletal riders whose empty eye sockets gleamed sapphire. Above, the storm ceiling twisted like a bruised veil. Clouds pierced now and again by spectral shapes. Two undead dragons, one pale as moonglass, the other a milky blue, riding the gale in hungry circles. Frostfire leaked from their maws, showering the ranks below with shards that flashed like shattered crystal and melted nothing. Jon hovered upon Vihalaxes at the wall's midpoint, wind knifing under scale plates stitched days before. The great dragon beat his heeled wings, each stroke a rumble inside Jon's ribs. He felt the beast's blood thrumming. Eager, furious. Ahead on the ice plain, torches along the night's watch palisades burned lemon green. Salar's concoction of pine tar, lamp oil, and pulverized dragonglass powder that ignited with heat but burned cool enough to handle until thrown. Ranks of archers now dipped arrowheads into braziers where the mixture simmered. A low whine rose above the gale, horn made from the tusk of a narwhal, blown by crannogmen crouched beneath the wall's eastern shadow. 3 notes. Enemy flyers sighted. Jon narrowed his eyes. There, slicing from the storm bank, swooped the blue dragon, span nearly equal to Vihalaxes. Wings ragged, holes rimmed with rime. Its rider was a thin silhouette of bone and splintered armor, ice horns curling from a skull still crowned with rotted hair. One of the Night King's lieutenants, a thing whispered of in freefolk fears. The Frostborn. Jon leaned forward and murmured Balerion. Vihalaxes tucked his wings and dove. Air shrieked, snowflakes whipping past like sparks from a grindstone. The undead dragon twisted to meet them, jaws yawning. Frostfire roared forth, a crystalline geyser that crisped snow in midair, freezing moisture to a glittering curtain. Jon felt the sting on exposed skin despite wool scarf. Vihalaxes banged sharply, tail whipping through the mist. Steam burst from his nostrils in anger. They skimmed low across the plain, just above reaching white spears, then shot upward behind the Frostborn's mount. Jon raised his arm. From the wall's crown, a cluster of umber slingers released. Dragonglass bolas spun outward. One tangled the undead dragon's left forewing. Another snapped around tail vertebrae, already brittle. Ice cracked. Gray membrane tore wider. The beast lurched, course faltering. Jon urged Vihalaxes beneath the crippled wing. Claws raked bone. With a sound like splitting timber, Vihalaxes' talons sheared the joint. The undead dragon spiraled earthward, shrieking an echo of life it no longer possessed. It slammed into white ranks, crushing bodies that reassembled even as bones cracked. A cheer rose from the wall, drowned quickly by thunder. The second undead dragon descended, larger, heavier, its scales opalescent beneath frost. Mounted astride a throne of ribs sat the Night King himself, helm carved of translucent ice. His gaze locked on Jon, and for an instant, Jon swore cold fingers brushed his mind. A sensation of silence so profound, it rang like a bell. The Night King extended one clawed hand. Blue fire pulsed within his palm, coalescing into a spear of frozen light. He cast it. The world narrowed to that shard of death streaking the sky. Jon heeled Valaxi's hard right. Spear passed a hand's breadth behind, searing the air with a sound beyond understanding. Ice singing against existence. It struck the wall's parapet, 100 feet down, exploding into a geyser of shattering ice that hurled men and stone alike in deadly shrapnel. Jon gritted teeth. Memories flashed of Viserions' fall in that frozen lake years before. A dragon slain by a single lance of ice. He would not add Valaxis to the Night King's menagerie. He drew Longclaw, the Valyrian steel flashing red where lantern light caught the runework. It felt strangely alive in his grasp, blade humming with heat as though sensing the enemy. Valaxis roared, flame gathering. Jon guided him into a steep climb, then dove straight at the Night King. Frost Dragon bellowed, wings hammering air. Two predators launched in mirrored charge. Wind howled. Snow ripped sideways. At the last moment, Jon barked the Dracarys' command. Valaxis expelled a torrent of black-red flame. Heartfire mixed with molten embers. The Night King met it with a cone of frostfire. A clash of elements, red and blue colliding in midair, forging a vortex of steam that boiled and froze simultaneously. Crystals exploded outward in radiant shards. Valaxis strained, wings trembling as though pinned by invisible weight. The frost dragon's eyes blazed brighter, pushing back. Below, the living saw their champion locked in deadly equilibrium. Val, standing on a scaffold of timbers strapped to the wall's face, seized a belled war horn and blew a signal. Assault teams forward. Free folk warriors clad in patchwork leathers swarmed through the ice gate, dragging sledges loaded with dragonglass stakes. Manderly halberdiers moved beside them, shields interlocking. Overhead, Salar's scorpions flexed. At Rob's shouted order, bolts of fused black glass and steel punched outward with concussive twang. They whistled over friendly heads and sank into white ranks. Where they pierced, bodies shattered, blue motes extinguished like candle flames in wind. But still the dead came. They clambered over their own fallen, limbs askew. Eyes cold. The crash of iron met brittle bone. Obsidian blades met ice-forged swords. Every strike that killed a wight released a puff of sparkling frost, floating upward to rejoin the storm. On the right flank, Lady Mage Mormont led a wedge of Bear Islanders roaring their war chant. She wielded a dragonglass axe, hefted like pinewood. Each swing severed blue-veined sinew. To her left, shuffled a line of constructs, automata of wood and leather that Sam and Crannog engineers had fashioned. Giant shield frames, fronted with mirrored steel salvaged from ruined septs, designed to reflect shards of frostfire. They advanced on sled runners, pushed by oxen draped in boiled leather. When Frost Dragon's breath raked low, the mirrors flashed, scattering the cold beam into harmless halos. Oxen lowed but did not freeze. Farther west, Salar herself manned an artillery platform, strapped to Valaxis, lending perch atop the wall, a clockwork repeating scorpion she'd built from shattered catapults. Cogs clicked, releasing a storm of slim darts tipped in obsidian dust. They hissed across the night like angry hornets, piercing skulls and ribcages with uncanny accuracy. Around her, apprentices fed hoppers, faces smeared with soot and hope. Yet the living line bent. White giants slammed into palisades of sharpened spruce. Wood groaned, snapped. One giant toppled inward, crushing a knot of archers beneath its corpse before they could scramble. Another hoisted a 5-horse-long log and swept defenders from their feet like children's toys. Dragonglass slowed them, but mass and momentum ground forward. Atop the wall's central tower, Howland Reed knelt over a bowl of still water tinged with weirwood sap. He whispered words older than kingdoms, palms hovering. The surface rippled with phantom leaves, and suddenly thorn vines erupted from the ground near the giant's ankles, spectral green glowing through snow, twisting round bones, anchoring feet. The giant stumbled, roars dissolving into crackling moans as vine and dragonglass arrows felled them. But each small victory cost blood. Jon felt the lives flicker, bonds he'd forged through weeks of unity snapping under cold. Rage churned. He pressed Vihalaxes harder, pouring will into the dragon's heart flame. Red pushed blue. Frost retreated inch by inch. The Night King narrowed his crystal eyes. He lifted second spear, ice forming in palm like quicksilver freezing. Before he could throw, Vihalaxes whipped his tail. The armored ridge, edges recently sharpened with black glass shards, clipped the spear hand. Shards exploded, severing ice digits. The Night King hissed. Silent sound of glaciers grinding. Jon saw opening. He rose in stirrups, Longclaw poised. The steam vortex burst. Vihalaxes plunged talons into the frost dragon's breastbone. Ice cracked like thunder. Jon leapt, boots landing on the undead creature's neck, just below the Night King. Wind screamed. Jon balanced. Swung Longclaw. Balerion steel met ice helm. Sparks of red met blue. The blade bit, shaving a crescent from crystalline crown but not cleaving through. The Night King's hand shot out, grasping Jon's throat with fingers colder than oblivion. Vision dimmed. Breath crystallized inside his chest. He felt memories stutter. Faces of Ygritte, A.D. Day, Arya, fading. From far below, a howl rose. Host, voice-splitting night with primeval fury. White blur streaked up the wall's sheer face, claws finding purchase in cracks. Ghost launched from a parapet, arc of muscle and snow. He crashed into the frost dragon's hindquarters, jaws wrenching a chunk of icy sinew. The undead beast bucked. The Night King's grip slipped. Jon gasped air sharp as knives. He drove Longclaw again, two-handed, straight into the Night King's chest. Steel screeched, sliding between shards of armor. Blue light flared along runes etched in ice, flaring against Valyrian glyphs on blade. For one heartbeat, Jon thought he'd failed, until a sound like distant thunder rolled within the Night King's frame. Crack! Hairline fractures. Spider webbing from the wound. Blue glow flickered. The Night King seized Longclaw's edge, pushing it out. Jon snarled and kicked, but ice strength forced blade an inch free. Then Ghost bit deeper, yanking hind leg. Vihalaxes added weight. Talons crushing ribs of frost dragon. Cracks raced. Jon released Longclaw with left hand and drew the dragonglass dagger Melisandre had pressed upon him. A shard veined with ember. He slammed it up under the Night King's exposed arm into frozen heart. Silence, profound. Like the moment between lightning and thunder. The Night King's eyes widened. Jon saw a reflection of himself. Small but burning. The dragonglass melted into the Night King's core. Orange veins pulsed outward. A sound like wind through dead leaves escaped the blue lips. Light exploded. The Night King shattered into a storm of crystal dust, whisked away on sudden updraft. His frost dragon convulsed. Blue fire guttered. Dead wings beat once, twice. Then the creature collapsed earthward, in spiraling ruin of ice shards. Jon leapt back to Vihalaxes' saddle, Ghost clinging by fangs to spines until they were safely above. Below, the undead host faltered. Where the Night King fell, a hollow crater smoldered with eerie orange. Ice turning to mist. White soldiers stuttered, eyes flickering, blades lowering. Some crumbled outright. Others staggered as if pulled by invisible marionette strings lacking a puppeteer. But legions remained, guided by lesser lieutenants whose sapphire glare still burned. Battle was far from won. Jon surveyed chaos. The left flank bent under wave of newly risen dead. Fallen men from earlier in battle now raised by a white-robed other who extended arms over corpse pile. Jon gritted teeth. For every victory their losses fed the enemy. He saw Robb atop a ridge of packed snow, directing Manderly pikes to plug a breach. Flame pots exploded overhead, showering burning tar that stuck to whites. Yet Robb's leg hindered him. A skeletal bear charged, smashing into his shield. He fell. Jon swooped low. Vihalaxes belched fire. Bear ignited, staggered, then burst. Jon swung down, hauled Robb onto Dragon's haunch. Robb, breath ragged, nodded thanks, eyes aflame with stubborn life. They touched down behind friendly lines where Maester Lewin's protégés hurried to splint Robb's cracked ribs. Jon turned back to Sky. Exhaustion tugged his limbs, but he would not rest. "Cut the serpents' heads," he told Val as she sprinted past. "Find each lieutenant. Kill them. Free their thralls." She nodded, face streaked with soot, and vanished into melee with 2 eagle-cloaked freefolk bound for white commanders. Hours blurred. Dragon dive scorching clusters of undead. Salar's scorpion reloading till spring snapped. Reed's green magic tangling blighted roots about pale ankles. Samwell on parapet calling coordinates for artillery salvos shaped from fused dragon glass and lead. Children of the northern villages running weed. Children of the northern villages running. Vorard, snow. Mid-afternoon. Storm clouds parted briefly, sun casting silver across carnage. Snowflakes melted in that light. Jon took heart. Roller's gift or simple fortune, he cared not. Under the sun's gaze, white flesh smoked, slowing advancement. He rallied his last reserves, Asha's ironborn rearguard, and led a charge across the plain to seize a ridge of broken ice where 3 lieutenants gathered around a banner of swirling frost. Valaxes landed amidst them like judgment. Ironborn axes chopped knee-height. Freefolk arrows hissed above. Jon leapt, long claw now thrumming with heat, blade edges glowing faint red. He moved through the carnage, a blur of steel and resolve. 1 lieutenant raised crystal halberd. Jon parried, blade singing. Sparks met snow. He pivoted, sliced through collarbone. The creature burst into shards. Asha drove Shayax into second spine. Enyamed shattered. Third tried to flee. Val's eagle swooped, talons ripping crown before Jon cleaved its back. Each lieutenant's fall triggered collapse of dozens of whites, clearing swaths of battlefield. Evening bled in, and though dead still fought, their commanders were scattered, cohesion failing. Northmen pressed advantage. Mormont shield wall advanced chanting. Umber berserkers hurled log spears. Sam triggered a last contingency. Barrels of lion fire, wildfire neutralized with dragonglass powder to burn only undead tissue, catapulted into densest knots. Flames blossomed eerie purple, consuming whites with little spread to snow or wood. In twilight's blue gloom, final pockets of resistance crumbled. The great storm overhead unraveled, flakes easing until only silent dust drifted. White corpses lay unmoving, free of the magic that lifted them. A hush swept plain as surviving men and women lowered weapons in disbelief. Jon guided Valaxes over the field. Scanning for motion, he saw only survivors tending wounded, wolves nosing bodies for signs of life, and pillars of steam rising where burning undead melted into earth. At the base of the wall he dismounted, knees wobbling. Ghost trotted, muzzle stained frost blue, and pressed against Jon's thigh. Jon stroked fur, feeling warmth radiate despite cold. His breath puffed clouds. He smelled pine smoke, iron tang, and something electric, victory tempered by sorrow. Robb arrived on litter borne by Bear Islanders. He insisted on standing. With help, he planted his banner. A direwolf stitched in silver, into churned snow. Around him, others raised flags. Reed Cranog's spear. Ironborn Kraken, in morning black. Manderly Mermaid. Val's red antler, a free folk host. Under these mixed emblems, survivors knelt or bowed heads. Sansa rode forth atop a shaggy Giron, eyes shining tears catching starlight, though she remained composed. Jon stepped forward. Silence deepened until only crackle of distant firepots remained. "The long night is broken," he said, voice hoarse yet carrying. "Not by dragon or wolf alone, but by hands of every house, every clan, every child who lifted water to a wounded stranger. Let this field be our forge. Here we melted hate and fear, and made steel stronger than bloodlines." Nam? He drew Longclaw, point to sky once electric with frost flame, now strewn with newborn stars. "If I am king, it is because you choose dawn over darkness. If I falter, remind me of this night." A murmur answered, agreement, relief, grief knit together. Jon lowered blade. "Bury the dead with honor. Burn what you must, but mark names in stone." He gazed north, beyond wreckage to forest where darkness lingered. "We keep vigil, still. Night may return in ages hence. Let our children find our watch never ended." Then, cheers did not erupt. They rose like sunrise, slow warmth spreading through battered host. Tears mingled with weary laughter. Some dropped to knees. Others clasped forearms of former enemies. Torches lit, one by one, until the battlefield glowed ember gold against snow's crushed whiteness, a tapestry of perseverance. Jon turned to Valaxis. The dragon folded wings, rumbling deep content. Snowflakes dusted obsidian scales, resting there a moment before sizzling away. He laid a hand upon warm hide. "Rest, friend," he whispered. "Fire sleeps, but we guard its dream." In days following, pyres burned brief and clean, their smoke trailing north like silent prayers. Maesters catalogued fallen, recording freefolk beside knights, wildlings beside lords. Sansa organized breadlines, ensuring no stomach rumbled in victory's shadow. Salar's smiths dismantled weapons, reforging steel into plowshares for shattered villages. Sam drafted new charters for holdings offered to freefolk families who chose to settle the gift, lands now fertile under promise of peace. Jon journeyed to the grove beyond Castle Black, where the last heart tree south of the wall spread skeletal branches. He knelt in snow still stained faintly with shards of blue crystal. Val, Robb, and Sansa joined. Ghost lying between roots, Valaxis coiled beyond clearing, eyes half-lidded. Jon took the locket from his neck and opened it. Within lay a single strand of dark auburn hair. His mother's, given by Howland Reed the night before battle. He pressed it into a knothole at tree's base. Wind sighed through branches like a long-held breath released. He spoke quietly. "Lyanna Stark, Rhaegar's son, lives not as dragon only, but as wolf who guards hearths you never saw. Eddard Stark, your honor guides each step." Snowflakes landed on closed eyelids. He felt tears freeze at lashes. When he stood, Sansa touched his arm. "The realm awaits coronation," she murmured. Jon looked to night sky, now clear. "Let them wait one more dawn. I would greet it here, where watchers first blew the horn." That dawn came rose gold and silent. The wall shimmered opal, cracks from spear blast now frozen sculptures glinting. Beyond, the haunted forest lay hushed, as if even owls paused to hear the world's heartbeat. Jon watched suncrest, rays warming his face. He turned to companions. "Now," he said, voice steadier than ever, "let us return south, not as conquerors upon dragons, but as keepers of balance. Fire without purpose is ruin. Purpose without fire is dust. We will carry both in measured hands." He vaulted into saddle. Valaxis unfurled wings catching nascent light. Below, armies marshaled not for war but journey. Banners furled, weapons stacked. Freefolk children chased ghosts wagging tail, laughter bright. Snow-capped peaks reflected dawn. With one thunderous beat, dragon and rider soared, leaving swirling snow to settle gently on footprints of those who had broken night. The flight south would be slow, allowing wounds to heal and bonds to strengthen along roads rebuilt. But eventually, they would return to King's Landing, where a crown of hammered sunrise bronze awaited. Not to rule as tyrant, but to steward a realm reborn from frost and flame. As wolf howl echoed faint beneath, and the dragon's shadow glided wide across brightening sky, Jon closed his eyes a breath span and felt the world beneath. Scarred yet living, cold yet warming, and he vowed again silently that this dawn would not fade on his watch. Ka. The dragon's shadow lapped across the placid waters of the Trident, long before its roar reached the soldiers mending the broken causeways there. Many flung down hammers in startlement, then raised gauntleted fists in greeting as the black wings swept overhead. Jon Snow allowed Valaxis to dip low, acknowledging their cheers with a slow bank. The soldiers were rivermen and northmen together, still uncomfortable allies, but beneath the same rising sun, their salutes felt almost familiar. He had insisted upon this route. Slow curves along the river's healing banks, so the realm might glimpse with its own eyes the beast who had freed it from night. Fear would fade faster when replaced by memory of dawnlit scales rather than battlefield flame. Below, wagons creaked beneath loads of pine poles stripped for bridge work. Children too young to hoist axes trotted alongside, chasing scraps of conversation from the rough-handed carpenters. Jon could not hear their laughter, yet he saw the lift of small faces, heard it in memory. He pressed a gloved hand to Valaxis's ridge, guiding the dragon inland toward Harrenhal's distant spires. Even in ruin, those blackened towers winked reddish in sunrise, as though melted stone still remembered dragonfire centuries gone. It would stand as a monument now, he'd decided, not a fortress. Schools for smiths and scribes in its lesser keeps, a house of healing in the airy godswood, where ghostly ash trees had sprouted through fractured flagstones. The thought carried him through the dull ache of exhaustion. Battle's aftermath had offered little sleep. Endless parley with freedmen. Judgments for captains who'd pillaged under banners no longer recognized. A dozen envoy meetings where every lord petitioned for recompense or pardon. He had bent but not bowed to their demands. Food first for villages, he'd decreed, grain shipments unimpeded by levies until next harvest. When the Reach objected, citing losses to frostblight in their orchards, Jon answered with a promise of dredging the Mander's silted channels come spring, labor supplied by free folk volunteers, whose own holdings would otherwise lie fallow until thaw. Unity, he had said, meant shared burden, not shared coin. 3 days later, letters had arrived from Old Town verifying the Reach Lord's consent. It was working, at least for now. They crested the western rim of the God's Eye just as wisps of fog lifted from its mirror surface. The Isle of Faces lay in view, willows trailing green fingers over black water. Jon felt an old tug, a child's curiosity for secrets whispered in maester tales. But business lay elsewhere today. Dorne's banners already massed outside King's Landing, and he must meet them before rumor outpaced truth. He angled Valaxis south. Wind freshened, carrying scent of thawing earth. In Jon's chest, a quieter ache stirred, longing for the unassuming peace of the wall before fate had crowned him. Knights huddled beside Sam over crumbling tomes, ghosts steady breathing, camaraderie forged of iron and snow. That had been enough then. Now responsibility rode every heartbeat. Yet beyond the weight, there hummed a paradoxical lightness too. He had chosen this path freely, and with each steady breath the realm drew. Some distant millstone of guilt seemed to grind less harshly. It was nearly noon when the hills north of Blackwater revealed the city. King's Landing glimmered copper and slate beneath winter sun, its red walls patched where dragonglass shards had gouged mortar, its harbor bristling with masts bearing colors Jon did not yet know. He spiraled over the Gate of the Gods, glimpsing markets spread like a quilt of thawing snow, merchant stalls set neatly in rows beneath watchful guards. Scribes bustled along wooden scaffolds hung with fresh painted boards, ration tallies, charter excerpts, lists of orphans newly assigned apprenticeships. Sansa's handwriting graced many, orders stitched in elegant loops. Jon guided Valaxis past the half-ruined septi, now cordoned by carpenters who craned next to the Dragon's Passage. Atop its cracked steps, a choir of orphan boys practiced plainsong. Their clear voices floated up, a fragile thread through the city's clamor. He closed his eyes a moment, letting the notes wrap around bruised memories of another choir. Years ago, chanting for King Robert's tournaments. The Red Keep's courtyard cleared quickly when Valaxis glided in, snow-whitened cobbles steaming beneath his nostrils. Armor rattled as gold cloaks. No silver now, the color of compromise between lion and wolf. Bent knee. Jon dismounted with a fluidity born of months in the saddle, but staggered when boots met stone. Blood thundered behind his eyes. At once a pair of pages bolted forward with a water skin. He drank gratefully, wiping frost from his beard with a sleeve. Sansa descended the terrace steps to meet him, cloak of deep gray swirling. Her smile was faint, but genuine. "You smell of pine pitch and cold victory," she murmured. "And you smell of ink and sleep surrendered," he retorted, voice rough. They clasped forearms, then embraced. Few words were needed. She studied his face, fingers brushing the faint bruise at his throat, where the Night King's grip had seared flesh. The city holds, she said. Breadlines run twice daily. The faith is adjusting. They'll accept the charter if we cede them tithes from refurbished sept lands. I've drawn boundaries that satisfy both the Anvil's Guild and Septon councils. You've done more than I hope. Joan's gaze drifted to the scorched skyline. Any unrest? A pocket of old lion loyalists plotted to spirit away Queen Cersei during her confinement. She answered. Asha uncovered it. No blood spilled. He nodded. And Quentyn? In the throne room. She said. Waiting with 300 spearmen, but they've stacked shields. He means to negotiate, not threaten. Jon exhaled, rolling stiff shoulders. Then let's greet him. War is finished, we build now. They walked through echoing corridors lit by high windows. Where tapestries of lions had once hung now stretched blank plaster awaiting new art. Jon's boots crunched shards of marble statues swept to hallway edges. Silent testament to Cersei's last tantrum before surrender. Servants in plain wool bustled about, carrying trays of broth and scrolls rather than wine. In the throne room, sunlight slanted through broken rose windows, casting hexagons of color across scuffed floors. The Iron Throne loomed still, barbs catching light like a frozen briar. At its base stood Prince Quentyn Martell. Tall, sun-browned, wearing lamellar leather dyed sunset orange. His spear axe rested not in hand but against his knee. He knelt as Jon approached, a gesture that drew murmurs from onlookers. Riverlords, Reach envoys, Smith Guild heads. Rise, Jon said. Sunspear's honor bends knee to none but its own people. Quentyn stood. His eyes held both relief and curiosity. I come for more than fealty, he said. Dorne's salt fields suffered little from frost. Our warehouses brim with preserves. Our glass blowers craft vessels for your dragonglass forges. My father sent me to pledge aid, but also to ask voice in council equal to that of the North and Reach. Sansa raised a brow at Jon, leaving response to him. Jon inclined head. Equal voice granted, but seats are won by labor as well as wine. Will Dorne man the trident dredging? Send healers north come spring? Quentyn smiled slightly. Spearwives have steadier hands than most maesters. Consider it done. They clasped wrists. Cheers rippled. Next approached Lady Asha Greyjoy, salt-scorched and smelling of tar, hair bound in iron rings. She gripped Jon's shoulders, voice carrying. Silence bobbed a wreck off pike. 2 nights hence. Euron survivors speak your name with fear. The Iron Isles will raid no more under my watch. She reached into her belt pouch, producing a blackened crown trimmed with shark teeth. The King's Moot crowned me with this. I renounce it. Instead, I ask for a chair in your hall. Admiral of Western Seas, charged with protecting grain fleets. Jon took the crown, feeling weight of sea salt and old blood. He nodded. Admiral, you are. You are. Sworn to defend, not pillage. Her grin stretched wolfish as she turned to the assembly. Hear that? We'll guard your gold, not steal it, assuming you pay sailors in honest coin and rum. Laughter broke tension, but Jon's chest tightened anew when he glanced at the Iron Throne. Its barbs glinted. Centuries of conquest circled there like ghosts. He had no wish to sit upon it. Yet lords expected ceremony. Sansa stepped beside him, offering small parchment. Her draft for a new coronation rite. It proposed forging a circlet of sunrise bronze and obsidian, light enough to wear but etched with runes of vigilance. No bending knee to throne. Instead, the king would swear on a blade of Balerion steel before representatives from each major region, pledging to uphold the charter. Sansa's handwriting wavered at last line, truth of nerves beneath composure. He read it twice. Then he shook his head, folding the parchment. Melt the throne, he said softly. Shock rippled. Sansa's breath caught. In near silence, Jon walked to the dais. He set his palm on a jagged armrest, edges nicking glove leather. "This chair fed ruin," he said, voice carrying despite hush. "Every war since Aegon's landing sharpened its blades. A new realm deserves a seat forged of joined hands, not stolen swords." Prince Quentyn stepped forward first. "Dorne will not mourn its loss." He unsheathed his short sword, placed it on steps. Pommel pointed to Jon. "Melt this with it." Asha shrugged off her sea axe. Iron paid in iron. She added the blade atop Quentyn's. One by one lords approached, laying weapons down, some gleaming with ancient legacies, others nicks and rust from recent fields. Sansa drew a slim dagger once belonging to Arya and placed it last. Tears blurred but did not fall. Jon turned to crowd. "Salar will smelt these into a council table ringed by seats equal in height, one for each region. We govern together. The crown," he glanced at Sansa, "shall rest not on my head alone but be passed to any who earns trust of 2/3 council vote." Maester Sam, standing near pillar shadows, beamed like dawn through cloud. Reed smiled as if prophecies not unbound. Yet murmurs bubbled among certain lords, fear of dissolved hierarchy. Jon raised a hand. "Oaths stand. Land rights respected. But law sits higher than blood now. If my reign fails these terms, you will remove me. Peacefully." Then gold had once glinted in the throne room's banners. Now reflection flickered inside men's eyes. Hope wrestling cynicism. But no one voiced dissent. A booming clang announced Salar's entrance with her forge crew pushing wheeled crucibles. Sparks showered as they surveyed the piled blades. She spat into gloved palm, then rubbed hands together, grinning. "Be ashamed to waste good steel. By next moonrise you'll have your table." Later, in quiet of solar, Sansa poured wine and faced Jon across small cedar desk. "You destroyed the symbol that anchored centuries. She said, voice steady with edges hidden. He met her gaze. "It destroyed itself long ago. I merely ended pretense." She nodded slowly. "Then tomorrow we must write a new symbol. Flags? Coins? Charges? The people need banners to rally behind." "Not wolves and dragons alone," he answered. "We weave stag and lion too, kraken, sun spear. A ring of sigils bound." She drank, faint smile playing. "A tapestry of impossible symmetry. I'll have patterned sketches by dawn." Jon laughed softly, eyelids drooping. "Sleep first, little sister. I stopped being little when you climbed on a dragon." She reached across desk, squeezing his hand. "Rest. I'll manage Dusk Council." He stood, kisses her hair, and made way to chamber overlooking Blackwater. Ghost snoozed by hearth already, one eye slitting open at Joan's approach before shutting again. Jon stripped armor piece by piece. Chain links clinked like distant rain. He washed with lavender water, not by preference but because Sansa insisted. The scent reminded him fleetingly of Ygritte's mountain flowers and of Melisandre's pyres, contradictory ghosts but fading. Sleep claimed him fast, yet dreams did not. Instead, he woke to pale glow of dawn creeping along shutters, a hush of rain pattering, stretching. He sensed something different in air, ease he hadn't known since adolescence. He rose, donned wool and leather, padded barefoot to balcony. Below, the courtyard bustled with rope pulleys and glowing forge mouths. Salar's crew already feeding blades into crucibles. Smoke rose straight in cool air. No wind stirred. He descended. Salar wiped sweat, gestured to molten channel. "Behold, even Valyrian mix melts if coaxed with dragon breath bellows. Once cooled, this alloy will sing when struck, but never warp." She handed Jon a long iron rod. He prodded glowing pool where swords lost identity. A strange gratitude unfurled, destructive tools becoming architecture. By midday, lords assembled in what had been the small council chamber. Tables pushed aside. Instead of thrones, wooden benches formed semicircle. At center stood rough sketch of new council table. Circular, 9 equal segments appointed to North, Vale, Riverlands, Iron Isles, Westerlands, Reach, Stormlands, Dorne, and Crownlands. One segment left blank for lands yet to swear, such as free cities or unclaimed wilds. Quentin traced finger along Dornark Tawdy. Lady Asha propped boots on Iron Isle's wedge until Sansa nudged them off. Debate turned to coin. Who paid for dredging, for sept rebuild, for widow pensions? Jon moderated little, letting regional voices weigh cost and benefit. When tensions rose, he reminded them of frost wounds, still healing on thousands of corpses beyond the Trident. That cooled eyes. Afternoon, light slanted low, when Maester Sam hurried in with dusty scroll. Message from Old Town. He puffed. The Citadel confirmed staggering harvest predictions for southern fields under warm spring winds. They attribute it to soot-infused snow fertilizing soil. Lords exchanged looks, a blessing born of disaster. Negotiations recalibrated, promises of grain shipments turned generous. After council disbanded for supper, Jon walked alone to the half-demolished rookery tower. Ravens cooed in makeshift pens, many still mending wings from frost flights. He penned letters, one to Night's Watch survivors, granting them stewardship over fortified townships along the Gift. One to the Braavosi Sea Lord requesting artisans to teach freedmen glasswork. One to Melisandre Yanashai, thanking her for dagger and asking no more sacrifices. He sealed each with blank wax, sigil redesign not yet chosen, and pressed thumbprint for authenticity. Twilight settled lavender over the city. Lanterns sparked along new grain warehouses near riverfront. Dockworkers sang a song Jon didn't know. Something about wolves that circled hearths but never bit. He allowed himself thin smile. Then horns sounded at the Dragon Gate. 3 sharp notes. Visitors. Jon strode to parapet. In Torchlit Avenue, a procession advanced, sable banners bearing 3-headed dragon of Targaryen, but trimmed in silver and midnight blue, rather than scarlet. At their head walked a young woman clad in simple rider's leathers, silver hair braided. Her escort wore cloaks of Stormland cut yet carried easy gait of East. Jon's stomach tightened. He had feared rumors. Sansa joined him, brows knitted. Daenerys Stormborn's rumored heir. More likely a pretender, Jon murmured. Yet, the dragon banners unnerved. He descended to greet them. The courtyard hush thickened under watchful archers. The woman stepped from shadows, eyes violet and steady, not fiery. She bowed. My name is Rhaena, daughter of Rhaegar Targaryen and Aelia Martell. Born in secret, spirited east. I claim no throne. I seek only place in the realm my blood belongs to. Bendy. Shock rippled through Quentin and Dorne retinue behind Jon, though they'd not recognized her face. Jon studied her. Skepticism warred with uncanny familiarity in tilt of jaw, brow, arch. Proof? He asked. She produced amulet. A dragon's head carved in jade, split to reveal scroll sealed with Martell's sun and spear. Quentin stepped forward trembling, accepted scroll, read. Tears sprang, though none fell. He nodded to Jon. The hand is my Aunt Elias, he said hoarsely. It speaks of her third child concealed during sack of the city, raised among loyalists in lists. Murmurs grew heated. Sansa sensed ferment, moved to calm Asha's sudden scowl. Jon raised palm. You come claiming no throne. What seek you? Service, Rhaena replied. I fought the Golden Company off stepstones, guiding freed slaves northward. My small fleet anchors at Blackwater, holds 200 Lyseni refugees, who will pledge to rebuild what war broke. I merely ask safe harbor, and right to tell my mother's true story. Silence lingered. Jon weighed possibilities. Factional rifts, Targaryen restorationists stirred by her presence, but also a bridging of eastern exiles to western peace. At last he spoke. You are welcome as guest of court. No more banners than your guard bear now. The council will hear your tale tomorrow. He extended arm. She clasped wrist, Strength sure, eyes relieved. In his solar later, Sansa voiced worry. Hidden claims breed war. They breed war when silenced, Jon said. We let truth breathe. That night he could not sleep. Visions flickered. The melted throne. Rhaena's banner luminous in dusk. Night King's shatter at his feet. Vihalax's shadow stretched across golden fields not yet grown. He left chamber, climbed to rampart where dragon roosted. Moonlight traced scars along Vihalax's wing. Healed but reminders. Jon leaned into warm flank, drawing cloak tighter. He thought of those who had guided him here. Maester Aemon's gentle instruction, Lord Commander Mormont's gnarled confidence, Corrin's sacrificial command, even Melisandre's harsh convictions. Death and life. Both had forged his map. Footsteps behind. Quentyn approached, eyes still red. Her story shakes me, he said. If true, she is my cousin, Dorne's rightful princess. Blood does not alone make right, Jon answered quietly. But honesty invites choice. We will test her. Quentyn nodded. After pause he asked, do you ever tire of choosing? Jon laughed, ragged. Every dawn. But dawn still comes. The day of her hearing dawned bright, unseasonably warm. Southern weather creeping north. Council chamber thrummed. Rhaena entered clad now in simple gown of gray and orange band. Dragon and sun. She spoke calmly, recounting orphan years in lies, secret tutors, eventual flight after a mercenary captain tried selling her claim to Volantis. She produced letters from Lyseni nobility, attesting to her identity, seal of the Golden Company acknowledging her as young dragon, though she refused their army. Sam cross-examined each stamp ruthlessly, verifying inks and codes. When discussion ended, Jon addressed assembly. We may test blood in Maester halls, but trust grows in daylight. Rhaena remains guest and witness to council's daily work. A year and a day, she shall serve in city granaries, at orphan houses, at tribunal benches. If after, realm finds her worthy, we seat her on council. Should evidence prove false, she departs east unharmed. Mensau. Most accepted. Asha grunted approval. Quentyn exhaled relief. Few muttered, but none opposed publicly. Seasons edged toward first true spring. Snowmelt raced down King's Road gullies, turning fields to mirror-bright mud. Salar's council table emerged from molds, bronze and obsidian fleck, shimmering like dawn-lit earth. They installed it in new council hall, once Lannister vault. Around its rim seats carved with region sigils awaited delegates. When Jon entered first meeting, he carried no crown. Instead he set long claw across lap, sword of service. They spoke of dredging, of canal plans, linking Whispering Sound to Blackwater for faster grain barges, of mapped highways radiating like spokes from King's Landing, each pledged maintenance by adjacent houses, of scholarship bursaries for smallfolk progeny to train as scribes. Val and freefolk invoice petitioned for rights to trap pelts north of Last River, under license, rather than threat. Passed unanimously. News of council's works drifted across narrow sea. Envoys from Pentos and Mayor arrived bearing casks of olive oil, parchment, offers of trade routes previously under pirate tolls. Asha's western fleet patrolled stepstones. Bandit raids dwindled. In letters home, deckhands described capitals free of plague and war tax. Rumor named Jon not king, but Steward of Dawn. The moniker embarrassed him, though Sansa teased that banners might soon feature a sunrise behind direwolf silhouette. One twilight, a raven came from Old Town. Archmaesters, impressed by accounts, requested copies of the new charter for archiving, and proposed dispatching novices north to study dragonglass speartip forging. Sam whooped. Jon smiled, imagining the Citadel's gray beards bending to change. Yet beneath progress, unease coiled. Reports filtered of Sellsword companies consolidating near Tyrosh, under banner of a black sunburst, an old sigil of princes who'd claimed descent from Maegor's bastards. Spies whispered of mutineers among Ironborn not loyal to Asha, rallying behind tales of a dragon-hoarded treasury ripe for plunder. Every morning, Jon reviewed scrolls, marking potential sparks. He trusted counsel to douse flames before blaze. Summer crept, green shoots blanketing fields that had seen only frost-scorched stubble months prior. On Midsummer Day, children thronged markets where previously breadlines had formed, clutching handfuls of strawberries from Dorn crates. Jon walked among them cloaked plain, ghost-padding sentinel. None recognized him until one girl, hair in twin braids, pointed and gasped, "The Dragon Man!" Jon knelt, offering strawberry dottery. She giggled, asked if dragons liked jam. He said perhaps, but they preferred roasted goat. She giggled again. Her father bowed awkwardly, thanks tumbling, then handed Jon's slice of barley cake, before shepherding child away. Such moments mended the cracks battle had carved in his heart. That night, Jon climbed Aegon's Hill where a new beacon tower was being built for sea warning. Galaxies awaited, restless in warm air. Jon mounted, urging skyward. They soared above harbor lights, across moon-dappled sea. Far below, lanterns of fishing skiffs winked like fireflies. Jon breathed salted wind, felt tension loosen. He spotted a lone galley under black sail along northern horizon. Watch lights shuddered. Asha's blockade lines should have flagged it. Perhaps a lost trader or something else. Jon banked Galaxies, skimming wave tops. The galley's mast snapped suddenly, sail fluttering as figures scrambled. Jon sensed wrongness. No crew lit braziers, no oars creaked. Silhouettes moved slow, stiff, whites adrift. Heart kicked. The dead had lost commander, but not all craft. He loosed flame. Deck erupted, revealing bone-thin shapes, shriveling. Wood burst, but a hatch on stern spat more undead, clustered around a locked chest. Galaxies dived again, claws ripping hull. Water gushed. The boat listed. Before it slipped fully, something heavy rolled from hold. An oblong stone egg, black-veined, large as boar. Jon's breath caught. A dragon egg corrupted, perhaps by necromancy. It cracked in salt water, exhaling sickly green vapors before sinking. Fear prickled. Some enemy still sought to breed horrors. He marked Rex coordinates, resolved to search stepstones for source. Unity at home would mean nothing if distant covens conjured new storms. Back in city, he convened Midnight Council. Asha, Quentyn, Rhaena, Sansa, Sam Valsalar, each assembled bleary-eyed. Jon recounted Galley. Sam theorized renegade sorcerers from shadow cities, resentful of Dawn's return. Salar grimaced. If dead-shaped dragon again, we need counter now. Jon paced. We prepare an expedition after harvest. Volunteers only. We end route of dark magic abroad. All agreed. But Dawn already flushed pink. Jon turned to window. Gulls wheel over red roofs. Bells chime shift change in docks. He breathed deep. First though, Sansa said, smiling weary, we host festival of new charter ratification. People deserve song more than more war. He grinned. Let's give them music. Summer festival spanned 3 days. Minstrels perched on rebuilt sept stairs. Free folk drum circles thundered beside Dornish loot troops. Knights jousted not for favor but for orphanage coffers. Jon presided wearing simple circlet of sunrise bronze, finished by Salar, etched with runes of vigilance. Rhaena danced with Quentyn beneath paper lanterns, shaped as wolves and suns. Asha lost arm wrestle to Val, then laughed and bought her ale. Sam conducted contest of reading where small folk children recited lines from New Charter. Winners received quills of swan feather and scholarships to Scribe Guild. On last night, council gathered private on Keep balcony. Below, thousands held beeswax candles. When torches were doused, the crowd became field of stars. They sang an old northern lullaby Jon's mother once hummed, though few could know its origin. He closed eyes, tears at last escaping. Sansa slipped hand into his. Quentyn rested palm over heart in respect. Ghost howled soft harmony. Galaxies rumbled low, a bass note grounding fragile song against night sky. When silence returned, Jon spoke to his friends. This is the realm. Not crowns, not councils. Voices in dark, hoping together. Prince Quentyn nodded. And you are its steward. For as long as they will it, Jon answered. He looked east toward rising moon, west toward open sea. Duties waited. Expedition to stepstones. Watch posts along frostfangs. Charters yet translated into ironborn runes. But for this breath, under quiet starlight, reflected in 1,000 lifted candles, Jon allowed himself certainty. They had wrested dawn from endless night, and though darkness lurked always in distant tides, the realm now held the tools, and the unit, to meet it. He squeezed Sansa's hand, lifting their joined fingers as promise to all below. And the crowd answered, not with cheers, but with that gentle lullaby's refrain, hummed softly until the city itself seemed to hum along. Walls and towers and cobblestones resonant with the fragile, resilient core of a people, newly awake beneath a sky unbarbed by iron thrones. Jon bowed his head in thanks, then raised it toward horizon where first sunflower streak of true morning pressed aside the last remnant of night.